Sirius XM Sports presents At the Races with Steve Byk. Horse racing, handicapping, interviews. This is At the Races with Steve Byk.
From Oldsmar, Florida, Tampa Bay Downs, a very good Thursday, race fans. Sirius 162, XM 207, Sports Zone 999. If you're listening to Sirius XM online, and at our website, stevebyk.com. A absolutely fabulous looking day, and predictably, I mean, yesterday you were off the turf here, and now you got a perfect drying kind of a day with a high sun, and should really set things up for Saturday just perfectly. And the card came out, of course, fairly early in the afternoon, and if you haven't looked yet, it's one of those odd scenarios. There's going to be plenty of people that first thing they look at is the Tampa Bay Derby, and they blink a couple of times and think, well, this is not a fabulous assembly of talent. However, once you get past that, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that it's kind of an odd. The race came together with an odd group, and surprisingly, to some degree, I mean, everybody saw. I think and any sets of connections saw what the way the race was coming together, and very surprised actually that some outfits that that are sitting on 3-year-olds and looking for points, that they didn't give this a harder look and consideration. You've obviously got your Sam Davis winner and Jose D'Angelo. In fact, Dave Grenning, Dave in a minute, we went to dinner last night together, brought him to Cristino's, got a Cristino's. The lead stories, advance personality story is about No More Time and Jose D'Angelo. And then there's Chad Brown with Domestic Product coming out of the good second in the Holy Bull. So there you got the two headliners, and then it kind of scatters around. You've got not one, but two maidens, and as it happens, they're both pretty nice. George Weaver shows up with Sturdy. This was a late edition. I mean, Dave texted me, I don't know, after the show was over and said they're going to get 10 for this Tampa Bay Derby. And we thought it was down to 8. But there were a few people that jumped in, including Victor Barboza with the Gunther bred Grand Mo the First, who you saw in the Swale most recently, and had the Zuma Beach. I mean, he's graded stake placed, so he's a nice horse. He seems like maybe a cut beneath the Triple Crown season types that you're looking to. But George Weaver's got this maiden that has run into nice horses, including Domestic Product last October. He debuted behind Locked and Drumroll Please. I mean, granted, he was beating a pole. But he's coming off an 83 Beyer try where he's beaten half a length by Corporate Power and Batten Down. Two solid horses, and he's clearly a horse that the distance suits. George debuted him on the Wilson Chute configuration, and then stretched him out to a mile and an eighth. He's had 2 mile and an eighth tries. I don't think Sturdy's impossible as a. It might be a little difficult to make as a win candidate, but Junior Alvarado suits him off the pace type, and he could sit mid-pack here and make a run. Sturdy, not impossible. The other maiden is that Give Me Liberty, who had considered the Gotham last week and then opted for this for the 2 turns, coming off a mile and a 16th try. He was beaten by Dymatic, Diodoro, and Ken Ramsey. Ramsey's got the 2 horses in here. We knew that where's the other one? Wait a minute, did the other one? Didn't Ramsey have a second? There was supposed to be a second Ramsey, I thought. Good Money, of course, Chad Brown. We talked about yesterday that kind of forced Chad's hand the way he's been working. Ever Do It, who had the situation, Kevin Rice, with the situation coming out of the Sam Davis, where Villa Gomez came off. So, put a line through that. I mean, he was a crazy price. Heartened in here for Todd Pletcher, who's going to get an inside trip and is coming off a win at Tampa, maiden breaker. So it's a Crazy Mason, Greg Sacco, 6th in the Sam Davis, but stake placed as a 2-year-old. So it's kind of a funny Tampa Bay Derby. However, the rest of the card is terrific, and the Hillsborough in particular is going to be very difficult to parse out. Chad Brown with Fluffy Socks and Market Segmentation. Market Segmentation's been away since the Diana. Fluffy Socks always gives a good account of herself. In fact, just glancing, I don't know if she's ever missed a check or hasn't missed a check in a long time. Fluffy Socks, she drew the rail. And then you look outside to Elusive Princess for Arnaud Delacour, who came up yesterday with Jason Beam. And Delacour, hitting at his very typical number, 20%, 21%, judicious placements. He's only started 24 starts over the course of the season, which seems light. And then Cherie DeVoe with the See the Stars 5-year-old mare, Star Fortress, who didn't have a great time of it in that Pegasus filly and mare turf at 7-2. But of course, it won the Cardinal last November in her first North American start. That's just, those are probably the four top morning line choices. The Florida Oaks, which we're going to discuss later with Jeff Franklin in the Win Using Thorograph segment. The mile and the 16th for the 3-year-old fillies. It's very good, really well matched group, and I think it's going to be a fun discussion. The 2 races that if you go to Thorograph and sign up, if you haven't signed up yet, I guess we busted through 1,000. There's 1,000 of you, and there's no reason why, even if you've never used, that was the whole point of this, even if you've never used the sheets and Thorograph in particular, sign up. Email address, that's all you put in, and we'll send you at least 2 races each week, and then Jeff and I look at the figs, try to explain sheet methodology and patterns. So Win Using Thorograph today. The second race, and we'll talk about in a minute, the Beholder, is the other race out at Santa Anita. Santa Anita has kicked up their really kicked up their season. Terrific. I didn't expect to print out as many races at Santa Anita as I did. So you got a nice pair of stakes. You got the San Simeon down the hill too, but the Beholder Mile, that'll be our second race with this Florida Oaks. And I certainly hope for our friend Patrick Lewis, Upland Flats, and for the Rusty Arnold barn, poolside with Slim, comes back in this spot off the maiden win. And after the frustration last week with Victory Avenue. Patrick had the whole family at Gulfstream, and it was it'll take the wind out of your sails. There's a pair of Chads in here for Seth Klarman. Weigh the risks and dynamic pricing. Cassie and Gary Barber with Witwatersrand, the school that Gary, right, this college, the school that Gary attended in South Africa, and had a difficult time of it in the Ford Gal, and makes the transition to turf. Last year at Woodbine, 3 very good efforts. The Maiden Breaker, the Mazarine win, and third in the Glorious Song. So it feels like her future will be turf and synthetic after the dirt try in the Forward Gal. Tim Ham has got a first stake try with Destiny Star in that Oaks as well, and I think she's a consideration. Fun group. Dale Roman shows up with the horse Swedish Chant, Pharaoh's Wine, Mott with a Chiefswood homebred, Ontario bred, and Pharaoh filly, Waskisu, Austere for Brendan Walsh. The is really, really good. So don't be put off about wasn't what everybody's aspirations, hopes and dreams. It's a very good card, and it's going to be fun to put plays together. The Challenger, which is now a grade 3 the last couple of years, the Columbia as well, and then there's 3 straight. There happens to be 3 straight maidens, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Big full fields, so there's plenty to do, and I hope people don't just shrug this off because they thought the Tampa Bay Derby came up kind of light. Elsewhere, I wanted to do a quick review of the action that we're here for, and I guess I'll grab here. Let me grab Santa Anita quickly. There, by the way, there's an all stakes. The Coast to Coast on Saturday is all stakes. The 2 stakes from Gulfstream and the 3 from Santa Anita, because there's also the Santa Isabel. But the Beholder Mile, and I saw a headline somewhere. A dare. Actually, it was about the Santa Isabel. That Kinza, towers over Santa Isabel field. She doesn't tower over this field. She's the filly to beat on the 2 for 2, the Las Virgenes win and the Maiden win with 90 buyers, 96 and 93. But she does not tower over the field. And I don't know if Jeff Franklin will have a chance to have looked at this race from a sheet standpoint. But Mark Glatt, that Navy Bell, she is, from a fig standpoint, she fits. Ultimate Authority on the rail, the Practical Joke filly of Yaktine, and the Amistoys, of course, the Practical Move connections. Ultimate Authority, they went back to the Practical Joke by the way, an OBS April purchase last year for $100,000, Ultimate Authority. And she's coming off a wire-to-wire win to break her maiden. She did it from the 8-hole, too. Now she's inside, saving all the ground with Flavian Pratt. Ultimate Authority will challenge Kinza. She's a Tempest, Steve Knapp for the Bierman family and Sajay. 3rd in the Las Virgenes, beaten just 3. She's putting blinkers on, so she wants to go. The Santa Isabel is not open and shut. I'll just tell you that. And who knows what Glatt has got with this Navy Bell. She's a midshipman. So that goes as the 6th, the Santa Isabel. The other 2 stakes, I said, down the hill, the San Simeon. Anybody ever go to San Simeon to the Hearst Castle? It's very cool. If you've never been, it's very, very cool. I've not looked at this race closely. Phil D'Amato has got First time North America, Ottoman Prince showing up. Last seen at Epsom in a handicap win. It's actually a 3-time winner in the UK. And Iridio, we love Iridio. Iridio is in here, coming off the Clocker's Corner. And then the Beholder Mile, as hinted. Adair Manor, as Baffert told you on Monday. But how about Todd Pletcher, first start for Interstate Daydream with the new jacket, the jacket of Mike Rapoli. Interstate Daydream goes out looking for big game and grade 1 victory. She's already grade 1 placed, of course. And Interstate Daydream makes her 5-year-old debut in this spot. Sweet Azteca from Michael W. McCarthy and Mrs. Zebarth. Kristen Bach shows up in here. Desert Dawn off the La Cañada win. This will be fun, and I'm anxious to hear what Jeff Franklin has to say about the race. Window Shopping makes a 4-year-old debut for Mandela and the Basses. Perry and Ramona, another American Pharaoh, and won the Summertime Oaks last June. So grade 2 winner in here. Window Shopping. Turner Loose for D'Amato. Good race. Good grade 1. And the rest of the card, like I said, I did not expect to end up printing all the races I did. The card finishes with a turf sprint maidens for Calbreds. There's 6 furlong maiden race goes as the third, 6.5 for the boys on the dirt maiden group. Some interesting pedigrees. Got to do that pedigree work ahead of this. So quite a bit between Tampa and Santa Anita. Even the Arlington, the Aqueduct card is actually quite good. So you got plenty to keep us busy as we get going. All right. Tell you what's going on here, and I've got other news that'll take us probably to the bottom of the hour. The word, of course, that came late in the show that Larry Letterman had passed, and the outpouring was certainly expected, and it's amazing how race callers, the connection that horse players and fans and stakeholders have to the men and women that call the races. And Letterman was so different and unique. And it's funny that the word came after I'd finished that conversation with Jason, but it is remarkable the personalities that find their way to the top of these buildings and relay the action. And what's amazing about Letterman is that his career was not as long as some, probably a little under, probably 25 years, 28 years, and then the illness. He started to have to battle the illness, and the fact that he lived as long as he did with this brain tumor is a testimony to him, because I think they initially said they'd give him 18 months, and he made it like another 12 or 13 years. But 67 is not an age that this year in this in the current environment, where people are living well into their 80s as a matter of course, it just feels that everybody was robbed. Not only was he a funny and unique talent calling races, but away from the track. It just, everybody that had a dealing with him just were appreciative, kind and thoughtful and supportive, and I mean a mensch of, just epic proportion. And that's what I think you're gonna hear. You're gonna hear both, because I wanted to be very careful about who might come forward and that we could offer as the best voices. And so Paul Kornman, who was his best friend. I mean, there's no other way to describe Kornman. I mean, there's plenty of ways to describe Kornman, but one of them is Larry Letterman's best and closest friend for years and years. And so Paul and Paul said, "Don't ask me about his race calling, because it's for him. It's a different perspective." So Paul Kornman is going to join us in about 10 minutes, and then Frank Miramati. And Frank also, and from a professional standpoint, and I'm sure, obviously, given Frank's profession, and Frank's, warmth and humor and approach. I mean, Frank has kind of put away some of the shtick, to be honest. When race calling, he's calling it straight, but he was. For as long as I've known Frank, Larry Letterman was a bit of a North Star to him, and Frank had been the one that had kind of kept me up to speed about how Letterman was doing. So Paul Kornman and Frank Miramati in these next little while to pay tribute to Larry Letterman. And the people that, particularly if you were in the Philadelphia, New Jersey marketplace, I mentioned yesterday, thought of more, the second half of his career from race calling as a harness voice, but plenty of time spent calling flats at Garden State and at Atlantic City. And then it's interesting, and Frank will probably speak to this. After he had to kind of step away from a full-time gig, he would turn up in spots and spell race callers that vacations, or if they had their own illness and needed time away from the booth, and the word would come: Larry Letterman's calling at at Monmouth, whatever it might be, and you would flock to it. He was on the show, I want to say, twice, and it goes way back. And I just all I remember was just being really excited to have him on, and this just feels so unfair. So Paul Kornman in a few minutes, and it'll be great. I've not seen or talked to Paul in forever. I think the last time was at Saratoga in the aughts. But I mean, his reputation as a horse player and as a racetracker, obviously, and owner. He's had some nice horses over the years, and so the principal portion of the conversation, I'm sure some other things will come up, but he's going to join us to pay tribute to Larry Letterman. A few other hits before I reach for Paul. They started. We'll be at OBS Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They started the show, the Bree shows, yesterday, and looking forward to seeing Jessica Martini. Jessica doing the coverage for TDN. And if you haven't been, watching some of the first crop, some of the smoke signals, the puffs of smoke, McKinsey feels like a sire that is going to be heard from, not just at the sales, but then on the racetrack. And 2 McKinseys and also a Munnings filly yesterday all went. 3 of them all did 9 and 4s in the first of the sessions. The Munnings went early and one of the first hips to breeze, and out of a Bernardini mare. And very, very kind of appropriate with race calling as part of our topic. This happens to be a half sister to Denman's Call. Yeah. And this is out of Evening Jewel's family. So I wonder if Gary Young is paying close attention to this Munnings filly. And then right after the Munnings filly went, the first of the McKinseys, this one coming from King's Equine, 9 and 4. And if you haven't watched you can watch the Bree Show, any link, obssales.com, and usually TDN and DRF and Blood Horse all have links at the top of their pages. This is a Weanling pinhook. This hip 17, the Dilworths paid $135,000, and he didn't sell as a yearling. They are an 8, so they went ahead and started training him up. And then Gainesway, it's a Gainesway bred out of a Holy Bull mare. Wow, 9 and 4 as well. And who's consigning this one? Waiver Tree. So we're underway at OBS, and looking forward. That's become such a fun 3 days, the Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday of the sale, and just a parade of people wandering through the lobby, and we call them over and sit them down and chat them up. All right. I know Cassie is going to be one of them because we put it off. I have other pieces of news that I think we save some of this until later. Yeah, we got just a minute or two. All right. Well, I'll give you. How about survey yesterday? Yes, it's funny. We took our shots with Seth and with Caitlin last night, and very chalky results at both Turfway and here. You had very straightforward results as I dig through and look to find them. They're amazing. Oh, when we have Chad on next, I've got to talk about Kubrick and what's next for him. There it is. Beautiful. All right, here we go. From yesterday, the races that we looked at, and they were off the turf here, and Patrick McBurney, not a Jersey bred, but he had a Munnings mare off the turf, an older mare, Breaker Maiden. And then after that, Jose D'Angelo with the 6-5 favorite, Dr. Bater. Seth went. It's funny. Seth went too deep in one of these races, and his third choice, of course, promptly wins. Money Song, a prospective gelding, is for Jerry Ochoa, and in the feature, Spike Zone, Jamie Ness for group of owners. Second choice in here, $5 winner. And Saybrook wins as the favorite for John Vincent. The Turfway action last night was shockingly until the late double, shockingly chalky. And then you had a 7-1 winner, Major Wager. Wow, who's 7 years old now? Tracy Wisner won, and Alex Achard, and Wisner also owns. And then you had a 13-1 winner in the nightcap, Jeff Greenhill, homebred of Jeff and Sherry's. Greenhill Racing, rare and ready. Just a nickel claimer, and Concepcion boots it home by widening lengths, 1-4 going away. So the late double paid, but everything else was very, very chalky. 2-1, 2-1, 3-1. Cox with the Godolphin maiden breaker, Befriended. That was the race. Both my idea, handed over, did not lift a hoof, and Caitlin's horse, Cy B, actually went favored and did not run particularly well. So, yeah, it still always worth looking at these. All right, we'll put that away, and we will turn to our topic at large. The first on the agenda, and I want to thank a couple of Frank and Aaron Yagoda, because I knew I wasn't sure that Paul would. Paul is a little bit I don't want to say reclusive, but you don't hear from him a lot. But I knew when I reached out to him that there was no way that he wouldn't want to pay tribute to his friend. And Paul Kornman joins us now from Las Vegas. Paul, repeat again how sorry I am, and horse players and fans from all over the game, and anybody that appreciates humanity is at Larry's passing.
Larry was the best person out there. The most compassionate person, the nicest person, and with his health situation lasted almost 15 years, there was never a complaint until the very end where things just got totally out of hand.
I mentioned, Paul, that the brain tumor and something that doctors thought would take him in less than 2 years, and
yes,
that wasn't acceptable to Larry.
It wasn't acceptable to his brain. Larry had in a cancerous, inoperable brain tumor. Anyone else that has that is gone within 18 months, and he lasted more than 14 years.
Not to dwell on the illness, but explain, Paul, what about him just kept him alive, and because he was not just alive, he continued to do as much as he could. I mean, he wasn't going to go through it full time, but he was active and he was involved.
He was still calling races from time to time. It became a little more difficult. The concentration just wasn't there, and he gave it up a couple of years ago. He would still listen to the races from time to time. Off the record, he would give me his commentary on certain race callers. He had his favorites and his not-so-favorites. And one of his favorites and a good friend of his was Tom Durkin, and they would keep in touch.
Frank Miramati's going to follow you, Paul, and he'll, I'm sure, talk about the craft. Talk about your relationship with Larry and how you came to know him, even, because basically you're lifelong friends as adults, correct?
Correct. I was working in the Belmont Park press box as the chart taker and sometimes chart caller for Sports Eye, if anyone could remember what Sports Eye was. And that was in the middle 70s. And all of a sudden, the Belmont press box is huge. It's like 50 yards long. So I was on one end, and I had no idea who was working on the other end, other than the legendary chart caller, Jack Wilson, and the racing form staff. So one day, if you have any real older listeners, Mike was the sports editor for the Long Island Press. He comes up to me and says, "Paul, you're no longer the youngest person here. There's a guy now taking Jack Wilson's call for the racing form. You got to come down and meet him." And Mike says to me, "You could call him any name you want to." Mike says to me, "I call him Oliver Hoopadookle." So I go down and I meet this person, and I go, "He looks like a Bernie." I never called him Larry, ever, ever, ever. For 45 years, every time we spoke, every time we texted, he was Bernie. And if somebody called him Larry in my presence, he would go, "Who's he talking about?" So to me, he's always been Bernie, the greatest guy. And because 30 years ago, I had what should have been routine brain surgery, a pituitary tumor. But with my luck, it grew so large, I was told by the surgeon that I'm going to need radiation afterwards. I needed 2 rounds of radiation. And back then, radiation got everything. So I have what I refer to as faulty wiring. So when Bernie had his brain difficulties, we became closer because I could relate and I could answer some of his questions about medications and, and such, and side effects and everything. So it was very strange. We started off as 2 young, broke, degenerate gamblers and turned into 2 older men talking medical situations.
The parallel careers, Paul, for you and for him, and I mean there are so many anecdotes that are flooding out, and I knew it was near the end of the show yesterday when I saw the word had really circulate. Talk about how much fun and his kindness is, because he's somebody that it didn't matter that he was in our game. I mean, whatever he would have done, the generosity and the kindness and the spirit would have carried him through any endeavor.
Yes, he would always reach out to whoever he was friendly with. If they needed any help, any assistance, he was there for them. And when things got out of hand in his own life, I would tell him all the time, there are people and organizations out there to help you. Just going to the supermarket was difficult for him. And he wouldn't ask for help. It was an amazing thing. He would be the first one to offer help, but wouldn't ask for any help until things got out of control. Again, he was such a good guy, always there to help others. He had a great, great, great sense of humor. And years ago in Manhattan, there was a comedy club, for all I know it's still there, called Catch a Rising Star.
Sure.
And I don't know how he ended up being on like a final stage, but he's telling me he's there and he's going to do his routine. And the first guy up was Robin Williams. And he goes, "What am I to do after this guy was the funniest guy out there?" But he never got into any detail. The fact that he was just there shows how funny he was.
He had, and again, Frank will talk about the race calling, but you can use the race calling prowess, and it was a different kind of prowess. It spoke to his intellect, and just a mind. That's what's so so difficult to accept about this, Paul, because he must have had a mind that was unique, and maybe too unique, that it short circuited with a brain tumor, because he was so quick witted, and you sometimes with race callers you can hear them thinking, if you know what I mean, or having rehearsed a potential line, but he had this staccato, just rapid fire wit that just interceded, and you could tell he just couldn't help himself. If it came to his lips, if it came to his
it just came out.
Exactly.
The only rehearsal he ever had is if he called a big race, and where he was at Garden State, I don't think there were any big races. I felt cheated because here I am in New York, and he's 90 miles away or so at Garden State. That was before simulcasting. So I never got to hear any of those race calls.
And it's funny because I see people, it's almost like that era where people taped races on their VHS and their Betamax, and or a handheld camera. There's bits and pieces of audio and of particularly of harness races, because he did kind of predate the YouTube era, where so many of the daily events are basically stored for posterity, but so many of the of the funny moments are being circulated, but then there's the personal experiences. Tom Liucci from Monmouth, and of course longtime sports writer in Jersey. He talked about having tapped out on an afternoon, and Larry saying, "Come on, let's go to AC." And did you see that story, Paul? It's hysterical. He said, because Larry didn't have any cash either, and so they're driving down the shore, and Larry told him, open the glove box, and like 6 or 7 credit cards came spilling out. And he said, "There's got to be something on one of those."
Years ago, when Bernie and I were both brokesters, a couple of times, he always knew people. He knew street people. He knew bookmakers, and he knew loan sharks. And, he was a great guy. So they knew that he would put these bets in, and if he lost, he wouldn't be able to pay. He would have a tab, and eventually he'd pay it off. And when he was very desperate for money, there would be an afternoon baseball game. He would call one bookmaker and bet one side, call another bookmaker and bet the other side, but tell them both, "I want to settle up today." So he was his own Lone Star. That's how he would get by from time to time. He would go collect, and then he would tell the other guy, "I don't have the money. You're going to have to wait a week, a month, or whatever."
How often you've been out west for, gosh, how long now?
Since 1997.
97. So
I'm here because of a combination of simulcasting and bad knees. The dry weather helps. So, to me, racing in the year 2024 is not what it was when I began around 1974, and it's just a job. I don't enjoy it like I used to. I used to love it. Every day was a new adventure. Now every day I just sit there and take my notes.
And you're still actively involved, and it's funny, my mentioning that you were going to be on at the top of the show lit up my phone, and because you don't.
I guess there are a lot of old timers out there.
Well, one text I got just simply said, when they heard your name, they just simply wrote "the source."
That's correct. You know, that's a name that's forgotten. I'm very rarely called the Source anymore. It just used to be me. And that name was given to me by a combination of Harvey Pack and Pete Axtell.
Wow. If somebody's gonna hang a moniker on you, that's about as
that was a good one. I loved it.
You bet, Axe, and oh my gosh. People are also saying, you got to ask Paul about Sally Bailey and Wynn and.
Those were great times, and those things could not happen now. I was able to buy into Wynn before there was so much information in the form. It would just say like NYB 1X, and that was it. There was no speed figures. There wasn't a lot of commentary. So here was a horse that was as common as could be on the main track. And he got on the turf, and he didn't win by that much. But to me, he looked like a horse that loves the turf. So after his next race, that was at Belmont, after his next race in Saratoga, I'm in the shower. And I'm thinking to myself after the race, boy, if I'm ever going to get involved in ownership, it could be this horse. So I went to Sally Bailey, who I didn't know, and I mentioned I'm interested in buying your horse. And she said, well, somebody else is interested as well. What a ride this was. That was a drinking buddy of hers from the racetrack named Fred Ephraim. And the three of us got together, and it was difficult. I was dealing with two alcoholics. Sally knew how to train this horse. There was no doubt about it. But she made a big mistake. She let the horse run in Fred's name. And the rules of ownership were different back then. And we couldn't run one year until almost June because the three of us could not decide on how to sign the ownership papers. I wanted it back in Sally's name. Fred got a big ego from the ownership. You would see him walking into the winner's circle. His eyes were out there like he just did the greatest thing ever. And eventually we got going. And we didn't get into the Arlington Million that year because we had such a late start. And possibly we could have finished 1-2 in there. But we changed the rules of ownership in New York that there became as many names on the ownership as need be, where back then there was one. Dealing with Sally was not an easy thing when she was an alcoholic. When she cleaned up her act at the end, it was a pleasure, but it was too late. The alcoholism had already taken its toll, and she passed away within a couple of years. And I don't know whatever happened to Fred.
Well, this horse, you beat some contemporaries, Rich Migliore weighing in. You beat Cozine.
We beat Cozine, and the day of the Bernard Baruch, we had a little breakfast meeting with my friend and partner, the Groner. The three of us, Migliore said, let's go to this drugstore that has a little breakfast place. And I said to him, we had Antonio Grail as the rider.
Oh,
and
wow.
If you like to be choked down and wide in every race, he was your guy. That's not the way I looked at racing. So we got rid of him, and I forget who Sally wanted, but it wasn't Migliore. That was my choice. So we had this little breakfast meeting, and I told him that day, if we don't win today, you're going to get fired, and Sally's going to give you instructions that's going to make us lose. I knew the way to beat Cozine. It was a two-horse race. Back when two-horse races meant it was a two-horse race, it was a two-horse race. You go to the lead, you set a legitimate pace, not a fast pace, a legitimate pace. Make Cozine chase us on the outside because he can out-kick us, but he can't out-tough us. If it was a slow pace, Cozine would have come blasting on the outside and run right by us. But Mig wrote to the instructions. We won the race. We had some good times. Unfortunately, the horse got a boat tendon due to total carelessness of a green groom. It was remarkable. He made it back after 3 years and actually won a race. That was extremely exciting.
Well, and
I ended up getting a good friend in NYRA out of this. He was a kid back then. He was a teenager when he got the mount.
Amazing. And you know, this horse is, again, you know, Paul, you'll appreciate this. I've been promising the audience for years a segment called The Horse That Time Forgot. And if a horse like this ran in this era, and especially being one of the early good New York breds and good New York breds on the grass, he'd be a superstar. There'd be people, you know, holding signs up at the track. I mean, he won, right? I mean,
well, times have changed, and are there still people at the track? I don't anymore.
Well, and many people, Davidowitz did the same thing, you know, to Vegas, you know, to have access to, you know, a wide array of racing products in one sitting. And, you know, we're playing more on our phones. Even when we come to the track, we're playing on the phone more so than you know, putting money through the windows and
right.
Live
I am a
tellers.
dinosaur. I sit in a race book. I watch New York. I watch Gulfstream during the winter. I watch Keeneland, and I watch Churchill when their post time is acceptable, like 2 days a week. Take the money out of my pocket, and I go to the window.
Well, and for those that aren't familiar with Wynn, the stake wins included the Rutgers handicap at the Meadowlands, which was a grade 2 at the time, the title handicap, which was a grade 2, then that Bernard Baruch, which was a grade 2 at the time, the Manhattan, of course, the grade 1, repeated as the Bernard Baruch winner, and, you know, competed in all the big grade 1s at the era, and then the last big win was the Man of War in '85.
Well, my most exciting moment with the win was when we lost, but we lost to John Henry
right.
by a head or a neck in the Turf Classic. I couldn't believe what a good race he ran that day.
That was that was right before the Man of War.
Yes.
Wow. Unbelievable. I had to ask about Wynn because everybody, I had 3 different people say, be sure to ask Paul about Wynn. And you've stayed very involved with, you know, with ownership and with parts of horses. And I
gave up when things just became too expensive. I remember one time I went to Tom Skiffington. I asked him about a lightly raced horse, if it would be for sale. I was figuring 75 to 100,000. He asked the owner, you know, how much he wanted. The owner said 300,000. And I said to Tom, he should ask for $1 million. Tom didn't know what I was talking about, and then it hit him. He's asking for such a ridiculous price that he's never going to get it. And, you know, that's when the game turned.
Well, and you know what? You say that you're not wrong about this. And now, you know, people buy in, and you know, and God bless, you know, the owners that you know, that get something off the table. You know, that it's an expensive game for everybody. But you're right. I mean, the numbers. It seems like owners have been conditioned to understand that they can get more than a practical price.
Yes, yes.
Paul Kornman is with us, and I mean, this is overdue, Paul. I've been doing this 17 years, and you're certainly someone that I mean, I hate that this was the reason I had to, you know, to reach out, but I'm it's a pleasure to be able to, you know, bring the audience, you know, bring you to our audience, and you know, to pay tribute properly to Larry Letterman.
Great guy. That's all I can say. Anyone that had the pleasure of knowing him would consider him a best friend.
You know, I know that they are suggesting, you know, any cancer charity and hospice charities. Is there a horse charity that on either side of standard or flat that you think people in his name, in Larry's name, people should consider as to pay tribute with a donation?
I'm sorry to say I don't even know what's out there. Just give him a good thought. That's all he would ask for.
Perfect. Paul Kornman, thank you very much. Any chance of seeing you at NHC? The industry, the horse players are coming to Vegas next week.
If one of the Matisses is in there, I'll make an appearance.
Well, then wait a minute. Then you got to come because Duke's being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
I didn't know there was a Hall of Fame.
There absolutely is. And of course,
okay, I will be there.
There it is. All right. And Paul and Duke and the family, they'll all be in attendance on Sunday evening. So, and we're going to be broadcasting again. So I'll get in touch with you on the back end of this.
Okay, that's great.
Paul Kornman, everybody, a absolute legendary player and racetracker, and paying tribute to really a mensch of epic proportion. Let's get a follow-up with Frank Miramati as well. And Frank is probably going to talk more, and not more, but particularly about the race calling aspect and Larry's popularity and just how much people, why they're so drawn. I mean, because he was like nobody else. And Frank will talk about, what the fine line, I think, probably between playing it straight and having fun. I mean, you can probably, certainly do both. And Frank is probably the best example of that. We know about the times that he's been mirthful and as the voice of Santa Anita.
Hello,
there he is, Frank Miramati. I appreciate you doing this. We just talked to Paul Kornman. And you were keeping me advised as to how Larry was doing, and much like Paul, one of his closest friends. So very sorry with the news this week.
Thank you for that. Paul was fantastic. I listened to the whole thing. Paul is a great man, and Larry had no better friend than Paul. So I'm glad you had him on there. Paul's a no nonsense guy, as you heard from just the way he even started talking, and. He always kept the important people apprised of what was going on with Larry, and just was an amazing friend to him. Like, you can't have a better, closer friendship than those two gentlemen had. So Paul is a tremendous human being. I'm privileged to have gotten to know him through Larry, and just a very special guy.
How about your association with Larry and Paul told me yesterday when we spoke and we made the arrangements, he said, don't ask me about his race calling. Let me just talk to him as a person. And so I thought that you could probably most, aptly, talk about him as a voice and as a personality in the booth.
Well, he was one of a kind. There have been some great tributes and stories written. So let me just mention a few people that put things out there. Matt Haggerty in the Daily Racing Forum, Ken Weingartner put something out for U.S. Trotting, Frank Drucker for Blood Horse, John White wrote about him in his Express Bet column, and in that USTrotting.com article, there's an interview or a little story that Mike Tanner had written many years ago, right after Larry got sick.
Yep.
There's been a great amount of press covering Larry, and he deserved it all. And he was an amazing. The perfect headline was one of a kind race caller, Larry Letterman. There was no one ever like him, and no one could ever be like him. He was just incredibly talented. He just had instinct. He had that great voice too. It's just, and he knew how to control his voice. He knew how to make things exciting. He knew how to turn it on. He knew what to do. It was instinct for him. He and I talked often about how much he wanted to be a sports broadcaster and how great he would have been. He loved baseball. He loved his New York Yankees. always watched the Yankees no matter what. Watched all sports, was well versed on every sport, and he just he could have been so huge in the broadcasting world, but you know, it was a labor of love for him, and his race calling was phenomenal. He'd throw people's names in their scores. He was about the only guy who could get away with that kind of stuff because he was such a lovable guy. But he was so funny and so spot on with what he did. And in the interviews in the previous publications that I mentioned, he talked about, first and foremost, the most important thing was accuracy and being proper. And I want to say this about his calling. In fact, I just put on my computer, and I would recommend for anyone out there that wants to have a good memory of Larry to look up the 1996 Caesars International Handicap. There's an entire broadcast on ESPN where he comes on camera and then he calls the race. He was so proud of that, of the work he did for that big race on ESPN, and the call that he gave Sandpit in the 1996 renewal. There's so many Larryisms, but in a serious way. You know, he talked about two of the horses training 3,000 miles apart, but only inches separate them around the turn. And he loved his stretch call of Sandpit with the hedge and the wedge. I mean, it was just he was everything. He came with it, and he knew how to get there for the moment. And when Paul was talking to you, you know, he mentioned that Larry was ready for the moment and he prepared for the big races, and he took a lot of pride in that. But I had spoken to Bob Quigley, executive at Garden State Park, many, many years ago in 1994 when he was opening Retama Park, and he was considering candidates, and I was trying to get into the game. And at the time, I had never called any races in my own voice, and he told me, look, I had Larry Letterman. And he said, and I told Larry, that stuff is great at Atlantic City, but I'll come and throw you off the roof if you do that at Garden State Park. So but Larry did a great job for him calling without all the shtick. And it's important for people to understand that he wasn't just some comedian. He just had that amazing ability to entertain and you know, to add flavor that was, you know, unmatched. People to this day, I was talking to Greg Sacco, trainer on the East Coast, a couple of months ago, and he's remembering specific calls. Steve Sassunas, who runs the jockeys room and was an apprentice jockey back then, remembering exact calls. So many people can recite just classic commentary from Larry Letterman, and he was amazing. He was an inspiration to me, and he was so supportive. And he, you know, as you guys mentioned, he loved Tom Durkin, he loved Marshall Cassidy, loved Roger Houston. He was close with Barry Abrams, who was great to Larry, and those two developed a very close friendship. And got to give a shout out to Jeff Corral. Never met him, never spoken to him, but I know that he really helped Larry quite a bit with some of the things and expenses that, and Jeff didn't do it for any kind of press or media. He was just, he had a special soft place in his heart for Larry, and they put him at the Meadowlands to strut his stuff from time to time. And even when Larry couldn't do it anymore, he still would try to muscle up the energy to maybe do a night here, a night there. He loved Sam McKee as well. That was documented very well. He was very close with Sam McKee and very crushed by Sam McKee's loss. Larry was just an amazing human being, just always looking for the positive, always encouraging people. I was very surprised to hear the stories from Paul about the gambling, because my experience with Larry had actually, it was a very different Larry. You know, he wouldn't bet a lot of money, and he was very responsible. Like, I don't want there to be some sort of image out there that Larry was some out of control gambler. He was not at all. In fact, you know, he had money he could have gotten and didn't do that. He bet $20 on a horse. So maybe in his younger days, he was a little irresponsible. He was not at all irresponsible at this point in his life. And he was very careful. His handicapping was classic. He told me sometimes he wouldn't even look at the names of the horse. He would just follow through. He actually taught me a lot about handicapping. When I had those years on TVG, he taught me things that were pretty, you know, you would think they'd be pretty simple, but they were brilliant. And it was trainer angles, trainer intent, things of that nature. But my favorite was when he would tell me about certain trainers that would get hot. He wouldn't even look at their names. He said, I don't even know the name of the horse. He would look for something called, quote, the look. And he was very good at that. And he was a very sharp guy and just a sweet soul. He was, I'm going to miss him so much. He was so good to me. I met him, as I mentioned in my Facebook post, I met him at Saratoga in, I got to believe it was 97. It was either 97 or 98, but I think it was 97 because that was the first time I ever went to Saratoga. And he was the host of the Daily Racing Forum seminars conducted at Ciro's. And he had me on that. I remember meeting him, walking up to his car. It was big Ford LTD. I just remember it was an imposing vehicle. It was classic. He made a comment immediately about the car. He was very self-deprecating, but he was a class act and a very responsible and a great parent and a great husband. And he had a hand dealt to him that was impossible. And he handled it all with class and just a good man. He set an example and he always encouraged me. That day we have talked about on numerous occasions, we got a standing ovation at Saratoga. We were going back and forth off of each other, doing different voices. And it was such a great experience and just a memorable one. And we always laughed about that. But he had no problem. And in fact, he was encouraging. He was a guy that wanted to bring as much out in me and others as he possibly could. He would encourage people. He would give advice. He would give feedback. I called him on a couple of occasions during my career of calling races. In 2000, I called him regarding Hallowed Dream. I think it was 2000. I called him about Hallowed Dreams running at Louisiana Downs. She was going for the record that Cigar had held 16 in a row. And I talked to him about that call, and he gave me some great pointers and some great advice. And one of the things he mentioned to me about that call was to make sure that in the stretch of that race, I mentioned the words Louisiana Downs because it was their opportunity to showcase her. And I just thought that was brilliant for him it's such a subtle thing. People know they're watching the race at Louisiana Downs, but he said, make sure you mention that she comes down the stretch at Louisiana Downs. So that was something that I took to heart and I used. And I've said it on several occasions before, and I'll say it again. Many people have thought that perhaps my best work came in the Arkansas Derby with American Pharoah. When he won the Rebel, he won very easily. I called Larry and we were talking about the Arkansas Derby. And I said to him, Victor Espinoza, he's just always got this horse under such a tight hold. He's just never asked him. And I'm trying to think about what I could possibly say if this happens again. And instantly, without any hesitation, he just, in typical Larry Letterman fashion, he said, we all know the answer. The way he said it. It was such a great line. And I've never been one to script calls. I've tried my best to never do that. But in a big moment like that, it was just in my head. And it was what I said in the race. Everyone knows the answer, and everyone complimented me for that. And I always gave him credit. And after the race, I called him and I thanked him. And he said to me that he never remembered telling me that. Now, obviously, he had been going through a lot. But that's just the way he was. He always deflected. He never would want to take credit for anything. He just wasn't that way. He was a sweet, great guy, an amazing friend, always trying to bring the best out in everyone, and just a very unselfish man. Paul mentioned that, he wouldn't take help from people. When I was at Monmouth Park, I would say, let's get together. We'd go to lunch, have a couple slices at Rockefeller's. He loved Rockefeller's pizza. And we went there several times. He wouldn't let me pick him up. He would drive there himself. And it was not easy for him, but he just was a strong man. And he wanted to make the effort himself, Steve. You know what a great guy he was. You could tell from his calls who he was. You could feel who he was. And he was brilliant. He knew he was brilliant, but he didn't flaunt it. And he could tell the people that were sincere in his life and the people who weren't. And that's what, Paul had mentioned in his talk to you, that there were some people he loved and some people he didn't love so much. His commentary, he just always would laugh with him. And in our last conversation, we talked, we talked a little bit, and I didn't want it to get all sad and emotional, and he agreed. And it was just a typical call where he asked about my mom. Make sure you take care of your mom. How's your mom? All that stuff. That's just who he was. A great family. The things he went through in life, just unfair. Incredible tragedies he dealt with, and through that, still entertaining everybody, still being there for everybody. Loved to go to Wegmans and do his shopping. And he took pleasure in the little things, the good fresh fruit in the seasons. And he had great quotes that are in those articles too. He said he threw a changeup when everybody else would just throw fastballs in his race calling. Then he talked about his life, and he said I always said it's better to have 16 in a blackjack game than 22, because at 22 you're out of it.
I saw
he
that.
Always tried to always look for the bright light.
When it comes to the calls, and there's a limited amount of them available, but the thing that I'm struck with, and you hinted at one there, he had a lyrical. A grasp of lyrics and literally the rhyming schemes. I mean, he would have been the first great Jewish rapper if he had wanted to be.
Immense talent, untapped talent. That he showed everything he had. That there was so much more there. That if there was another subject or another topic or another sport, his knowledge was incredible. So he would have been able to be on national TV doing baseball games without any hesitation. He was so aware of everything going on and watched all the games, all the scores. He loved to watch his TV, and he paid attention. Like I said, he was absolutely an NYY man at all times. Always rooted for the Yankees. Always would play if they weren't winning. But on top of everything going on in the sport, he knew he had an amazing sense for things. He was a great prognosticator of even sporting events. He would just let you know. He would talk about during the Patriots run. He would just say it's Belichick. It's just the way it's going to be. He knew it. He wasn't trying to. He wasn't a stubborn guy that wanted to be right in his own way. He would just look at the facts, and he could see things coming. He had great instinct, and I think that came across in his work as well. He could spot the moves. He knew in a harness race early on what was happening. He would come with some jabs on bad trips. He had his way of doing it, and only he could get away with some of the things he would say. They loved him. The fans went nuts for him. And in Vegas, I had read this a long time ago, and I remember this. I had friends who lived. A couple of my buddies were delivering pizzas for Pizza Hut. In fact, it was Pizza Hut number 27, for that matter, in Las Vegas, wherever that was located. But I remember the guy used to answer the phone, 27, this is Dan, when I'd call them. And they told me that the only calls that the audio would be up on in those days, in the early days of Atlantic City, were his. And everyone would just be at the edge of their seat waiting to see what name would come in there. And you would think that there's so much pressure for a guy to try to continue to deliver top-notch, entertaining calls. But he didn't feel any of it. He just did what came to him. He would see things immediately, and he would come with the goods. And it was decades of coming with it. Even when he was sick, even in his appearances that were brief, everyone looked forward to seeing him. I'm pleased that there are so many fans out there that are speaking up on his behalf. He had a great fan base. He knew he did, but he was always very low-key about it. He was not an ego guy. He was proud of his work. I will say that. He was proud of his work, and he should have been. He knew how great he was, but he downplayed it. You know, he was an amazing person. I'm going to miss him so much. I was thinking about how many thousands of calls to each other is an understatement. How many calls we've had, and how much laughter and serious stuff, and just we talked about everything. Very open with him. He'd always deflect. How's Frank? How's this? How's that? What are you doing? You know, just a great man. Just a very kind soul. Everything Paul said is so true. And people who came in touch with him know this to be the case. And it's a very, very sad moment to acknowledge that he is gone, and his legacy will live. And my job is to make sure that I do my share to keep that up and maybe post some of his great calls. That Caesar's call was something he was so proud of because it was straight. It was on ESPN, and he had it, and he didn't fold under pressure. He actually rose to the occasion and then some. Absolute legend, great man.
Well, and one of the reasons, I mean, in addition to your friendship, I thought that it was important that, and particularly the particular opportunity with you, because you have you've had historically a lot of fun with your calls, and with the job at Santa Anita, you've pretty much you put a lot of that away, and you recognize that it's a different job, and not to say the other jobs were B tracks or so forth, but the shtick, as we all call it, it takes a back seat and has been put away, and he, I wasn't in tune as much with the game, when he was at AC and at Garden State, but he moved interchangeably between flat and standard bred, but I mean, he could have been anywhere, right? I mean, he could have been any top location for an extended period.
There were opportunities galore, including coming to California to call at Cal Expo and places like that. There were all kinds of opportunities. They wanted him. They wanted guest appearances. They wanted anything they could do to get him, but he wasn't going to leave where he was. He was a family man, was staying home, and those weren't options. And he wasn't overwhelmingly compensated during his work time, but he just loved his job, so they could get away with not paying him what they should have for his incredible work. But there were people that stepped up and looked out for him and made sure that he was in the spotlight, even through his tough times. I don't know how he did it. I don't know strength to call some of those nights at the Meadowlands that he did. They were long, daunting. He had to drive. He wouldn't accept help from people. Very rarely. There was an older couple of friends of his that he used to drive to Atlantic City just because they couldn't drive, and he wouldn't go and gamble, hang out, and go have a buffet with them or whatever. He was just that kind of guy. He would do whatever he could for anyone, but he wouldn't let you do things for him. It was very difficult for him to allow anyone to help him, even in his toughest times. Oh, yeah. He wasn't into it, but there were people that definitely did, and he acknowledged them, and he appreciated everyone. He appreciated the love. He had so much love to give, and he appreciated the love that came his way. Well, just a very sad loss, and it will never be the same without Larry.
Frank, out of curiosity, because Paul talked about them in the starting out as youngsters in the Belmont press box, but I mean, do you know who put him put him behind the mic?
Who the actual person was that gave him his first job?
Or who made the suggestion that you should be calling races?
You know what? He told me that story. There was a time in which he stepped up. I think Ralph Sirocco was somewhere, and then was that Atlantic City, possibly. I'm not positive about how it exactly happened, but once he went there, it was over. He was an instant hit, and he was unmatched. His material was ridiculously good. Hopefully we can dig up some of those old races, and you could just pick any card any day and you're going to get some funny stuff, scores, news items, little jabs. You could see a race and read a race instantly. When they went by the first time, he knew exactly how the race was going to end. It was just the stuff he would say. He just had that great humor, and just things he would talk to friends about, obviously, that he couldn't say on the microphone, were phenomenal.
Well, and
just right on point.
That part of it, the people that that have been sources of reaction, you can tell that more than anything, they're going to miss being able to pick up the phone and call him and talk to him, because the phone calls that that part of it, I can tell from everyone I've read that was his circle of, and I'm sure a circle of support. But the phone calls to him or his calls to them, that's what they're going to miss, dearly. That they had to be wildly entertaining.
Even his voicemail had this, like, you felt this Dolby sound of his voice almost echoing like it was in a racetrack to the callers. Just a phenomenal human being. Ultra talented and very, very kind. All those comments are accurate. They're not always the case with people. A lot of times people are a little different than what they appear. Larry was pure good, and I love the way Paul summarized it. There's nothing that could be added to what Paul said about him. And Paul, I can't say enough about him and his loyalty to Larry and what a friend he's been to him.
Well, Frank, I appreciated it. The opportunity to have two people that were as close to him as anybody, and of course, you mentioned some of the sad things that he dealt with. Aside from the illness, the loss of a daughter and a wife, and I only had a chance to talk to him maybe once off air, but I mean, a guy that just is a legendary figure, and I suppose that nationwide he wasn't as well known, but I mean, everybody lights up when they and have always lit up when his name comes up in conversation, and that pretty much tells you what you need to know.
Thank you for giving him so much time on your show. It's well deserved, and he earned it. And his work really blessed a lot of people and made people smile, and that's not always easy to do. What an amazing guy.
Frank Miramati, everybody, and Frank, we will see you in a couple of weeks. We'll be out at Santa Anita, leading up to Santa Anita Derby. So we'll do some happier, happier rips. All right.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, Steve. Have a great day, and keep up the amazing job on the show. It's really phenomenal.
I appreciate it. Frank Miramati, everybody, and our appreciations of Larry Letterman. Shannon Arvin is going to join us, too. We have one more I mentioned yesterday, Mr. Hagan, and you want to talk another towering figure and historic family when it comes to Keeneland's, existence. So we'll get a chance to talk to Shannon next. Tony Black to follow as well. We'll go out to Vegas actually a second time. We'll talk to Rich Yang. We didn't get to Rich last week, so I want to get Rich's thoughts about things. And what am I missing? Jeff Franklin as well. We've got Jeff to join us. One thing with it's funny with all the conversation that we've had about the new constructions, whether it's Belmont now happening in the midst, and then of course Maryland is going to follow. Churchill finishing off this just incredible transformation of the paddock and the back half behind the building. It's nobody's going to believe it, I think, when they arrive. One thing we have not really talked about and included in those conversations is what's going on at Keeneland, because they're in the midst of a major overhaul of the plant and of the layout. So Keeneland's also probably include that in our visit with Shannon Arvin, who joins us next. Let's take the break here. We're coming to you live from Tampa, and we'll start to dig in later too, tomorrow particularly, obviously, the Twin Spires weekend preview conversations. And Chuck and Barry are going to visit together. Dave Grenning, of course, will do we'll do some handicapping, and everybody else part of the Friday conversations. We'll check in as well with Brad. I want to see what Brad Free's thoughts are on this excellent Santa Anita card and more. Yeah, take a break here. Back after this second half, live from Tampa at the races, Sirius XM.
The state of Pennsylvania has the best breeders program in the entire United States.
When you buy a yearling, it's a little bit like buying a lottery ticket. And we are trying to provide the lottery ticket that the likelihood is to hit the jackpot.
Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear.
Uncle Heavy late, it's a photo finish.
Pennsylvania and the PHBA have the best state-bred program in the country, bar none.
The winner, Uncle Heavy. He's a 3-year-old bred in Pennsylvania.
Who you betting on? How about an app created specifically for horse racing? NYRA Bets. We specialize in thundering hooves, fist pumping, and boosting your bankroll with robust weekly promotions and offer betting tips from actual horse racing experts. Bet all day and night nationwide. Get the action and thrill of horse racing with NYRA Bets. $200 deposit match with promo Steve200. Visit NYRABets.com for details.
The Ponds family's Country Life and Maryland Farms are the place for breeding and racing in the Mid-Atlantic. Country Life is nationally recognized for making stallions and currently stands the Mid-Atlantic's leading first and second crop sires, Divining Rod by Tappan and Mosler by Warfront, as well as Frisian Fire. Maryland's 5/8 mile training track completes the full-service facilities from the foaling barn to the racetrack. Join the excitement of racing with Country Life Farm, where our partnerships can take you from beginning to winning.
Want to get your career in horse racing off to a fast start? Well, the University of Arizona's Racetrack Industry Program is your winning ticket. The Racetrack Industry is a springboard to some of the industry's most successful individuals with a proven track record of job placement right out of college. If you agree in the exciting horse racing industry, the Racetrack Industry Program can put you in the winner's circle.
Visit ua-rtip.org today.
Why, in the past decade, has BRL Equine become the premier equine supplement company in the industry? Because we spend millions in research and development before we ever put out a product. Because we use only FDA-supervised facilities to manufacture for us. Because what we say is in them is in them. Because they work. Because if you're not happy, I'll give you your money back. And because top trainers and veterinarians in thoroughbred racing, standardbred racing, 3-day eventing, and barrel racing all trust in BRL Equine. Shouldn't you? To find out more how Flexify HA, Unlock, Bleeder Shield, and EPO Equine can help you, contact me, Joseph Volante, 215-501-6880.
Horsebills.com is a cost-effective, time-saving paperless revolution. Vendors are able to generate electronic invoices for owners and other vendors who can pay through Horsebills.com for just 50 cents. Turn hours of work into minutes with our easy-to-use site. Have our team take over your bookkeeping or continue to do it yourself and pay only our low monthly subscription fee. Check out our video tutorial on the Horsebills.com YouTube channel and get started today for free. Horsebills.com. Toll-free number 888-938-4643.
This is At the Races with Steve Byk.
We're back. Second half at the races, coming to you live from Tampa Bay Downs. And, of course, it's a dark day today, and hi, Shannon. Shannon Arvin is joining us from Keeneland, and as mentioned yesterday, the passing Lee Hagan III, one of those names, one of those family names that just resonates in racing history and so important to Keeneland. And I appreciate the opportunity to have you pay tribute, Shannon.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me this morning. Mr. Hagan was truly one of a kind. He was such a character, and I enjoyed all my interactions with him. He was just so supportive of Keeneland and loved that place like so many do, but he had such a special connection to it.
And the connection, of course, anybody familiar with the origins of Keeneland and essentially, the past 125 years of racing.
That's right.
It's one of those, taproot families.
Absolutely. And he was, in addition to that, he was trustee when my dad was trustee. So I have special memories of that too. Just a lot of memories of him being around Keeneland. And he obviously was passionate about the place and the look of the place and the feel of the place and the horses. But his real passion was the trees and making sure that we had the right size tree when a tree was planted, making sure the pruning was done regularly and in the right way. And every time we look down Maple Lane, we definitely always think about him because that was a brainchild of his, and it's such a staple and signature of Keeneland. So his handprints are all over it.
Literally a half century of service to Keeneland.
That's right, without a doubt.
It's interesting too because Dave O'Rourke joined me yesterday, Shannon, and we were talking about the new Belmont Park, and it does occur, and I mentioned this as I was heading to the break, that between Belmont's reimagination and a brand new building, the project at Pimlico, and of course what Churchill's doing to their the centerpiece of the action at Churchill with the new paddock, one project that hasn't gotten maybe as much attention is what Keeneland is doing, because you're in the midst of a major renovation.
We are. It's really exciting. We have spent a couple years, really since I started, we sat back and started reimagining how our grounds should look. And you never want to touch Keeneland because it feels pretty great as it is. But at the same time, we recognized that there were some opportunities to provide some more seats for our fans. We were selling out of seats in 8 minutes. So as we hit the grounds and tried to find the right place to start, it seemed pretty obvious pretty quickly that the area where the temporary chalets were for the Breeders' Cups when we've hosted them was a great spot to make permanent. So that's what we're doing. We've taken down our old administrative office building, which it was historic in that it was old, but it was not historic in that it had been there since the 1930s. It had been there since the 80s, actually, and was kind of a strange building structurally. So we have a new paddock building going there, and it will be able to seat about 1,500 more people, which is great. And then we have, those were our offices, we also have a new operations building that's going up, and we're really excited. We're working through the operations for our spring meet to make sure it's still the great experience everybody come to Keeneland. It'll feel a little different when they come in because we've got some cranes and construction equipment, but it's going to be great when it's finished.
Well, and of course, really not far away now from the spring meet and everything that comes with it. Between the racing side and the adjacent sales pavilion, everybody has to essentially keep improving and adjusting to the demands. OBS has had enjoyed an overhaul of their sales building, and it really actually criticisms of the game and of the industry. It feels like there's so many people committed to the future, which kind of flies in the face of certainly social media's narrative.
I couldn't agree with you more. We actually were talking about that yesterday. I was talking with one of my colleagues and said, for a business that seems to be in so much trouble, it's investing more than $1 billion in its infrastructure and improving the experience. So we have a lot of hopes for the future.
Well, and to tie into to Mr. Hagen, Keeneland stays very much in touch with the historic aspect of the game, and with the aesthetic, those aesthetics that are tied to its history, and looking forward. How far along? What is the timetable for the rest of that project?
So September 2025 is the scheduled time to be ready. So we'll be ready for the fall sale and the race meet that year with our fully renovated building.
Outstanding. Well, Shannon, I didn't want to let Mr. Hagen's passing go without acknowledgement. There's so many people like him that aren't necessarily, out front and well known to stakeholders, fans, and horse players. But the continuity, certainly of a place like Keeneland, responsible for that, for that continuity that provides the atmosphere that people love at Keeneland.
Absolutely, and he was critical to that. And we still work with his children, particularly his son Ben, who's on our board. So I know that his legacy is in good hands.
Shannon Arvin, Keeneland, I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thanks so much, Steve. You too.
Shannon Arvin and Louis Lee Hagen the third, and a quick update about their project at Keeneland. I'm going to get to Tony, who's, I know, actually Tony is actually mentioning that for those that have had struggles, we're adding we've added a second studio in Albany, and Brian handling that, and he's going to produce at least once a week, once a month during broadcast season. And so some of the streaming aspect has been a little hinky as he plugs into the system. At the same time, there's the YouTube that I've put out a couple of times when he filled in for Casey. You can use that as well if you're having trouble. And Tony just said to me, Tony, you've been having the stream has dropped on you a couple times.
Yeah, it keeps coming up offline.
All right, I'll fix it with you. I'll fix it with you after the show. Yeah, you can. If anybody's having that kind of trouble, and this is always true, not just for our show, but for any time you have trouble linking to an audio cast of any kind, if you close your browser, clear your cache, and reopen. A lot of times that's all it, and I don't understand the technology part of it, but that very typically will get you back to connected status. So that's the first thing you try because people don't know, whenever there's an update to any kind of a media player, you essentially have to kind of reconfigure your connection to it and how it its outreach to whatever you're connecting to. So and that a lot of times it happens without you knowing that the media player of your choosing that your computer's using that has had an update, and that'll cause trouble. So there's always something on the technology front that'll.
And you're talking to Mr. Low Tech himself.
Exactly right, Tony. I had to, I wanted to make sure to get to you. And even though I know you didn't necessarily have a relationship with Larry Letterman, he called you plenty of times at Atlantic and at Garden State.
Yeah, he sure did. And his calls at times had a lot of humor to his calls. I can't think of anyone right off. Take names of horses and connect them to another name of horse and turn it into a call that had some humor to it. He always was interesting to listen to, and you never knew exactly what he might come up with. And sometimes he just had a normal call, and he always was. One thing about him, he was always accurate in his calls. That's what I liked about him. And once in a while, I'd come down to the jocks room and space and say, "Hey, how you doing, brother?" But some of his calls, that he made, and they just escape me right now. The last 2 days I've been trying to think of some, but they were so funny and interesting, and he was such a good race caller and will be sorely missed. And my condolences out to his family, and rest in peace, Larry. Maybe you'll be calling some order of finishes up there. When it comes to jocks and trainers, which ones make it, which ones don't. But he was definitely was missed as a race caller.
Yeah, that really. It's a he was unique, just different. There's no, you can't even. Frank was on, and Frank is the closest parallel is Frank when he would basically not play it straight, when he would have some fun with things, with whether it's the impressions, the vocal impressions. But for Letterman, it was just part of his approach. It was built in, and
it was built in, but he didn't take it. It would maybe add some humor to it. But when it came to the accuracy and the horses, he was spot on perfect. And I was first Garden State when he was race color there, and he always, when they said they're off, or he said this, and because something humorous, either the names of the horse or some situation that was going on at the particular time. But the last 2 days, I missed your show, and I'm sorry I missed some of the conversation about him. No, he certainly was an interesting guy.
Yeah, it was really today. I mean, because I only saw that word had come late in the show yesterday. So really, it was today with Paul Kornman and with Frank Miramati. One thing too, Tony, that obviously made me want to make sure that to get you, it was the conversation about Atlantic City and Garden State, and what the circuit entailed in that, particularly in that era, because you fold in Monmouth and even Meadowlands with their flat schedule. I mean, to have had 4 racetracks, in New Jersey like that, that it's a, and they still run. Listen, we still run at Monmouth, obviously, in Meadowlands. Not as much with Meadowlands anymore, but I think people, of a certain age that have become fans of the game, they probably can't envision what it was like to have that circuit.
Oh, absolutely. It was a great circuit, and they would have meets, and the meets would be maybe 60 days or 90 days, and you'd go from Garden State would open up, and you'd go from Garden State in the early spring or whatever, and then you'd go to Monmouth Park till near the end of the summer, then to Atlantic City, then back to Garden State in the fall, and by Thanksgiving they usually were closing. But it was really interesting the way they did that. And I live right by the Garden State complex, and I think of all the riders that touched base with the Garden State Jersey circuit. And then just 2 days ago, I got a call from Iris Zakor. That was Billy Zakor's wife, and she's very close with Walter Blum. And she was telling me he's having some health issues. And I'm thinking, geez, every time I go past the old stable gate, I think of all those guys: Walter Blum, Frank Lovato, Paul Kalei, Chris Rogers. All these names come to hand. And I'm going to give Walter, when it's a good time for him to be able to talk a few minutes, I'm going to give him a call. They were the mainstay riders in Jersey, Walter Blum. I thought to myself, I'll never forget a horse I rode one day, and Walter says, listen, son, I watched you ride this horse a couple times. You're just not getting him out of the gate. He says, next time he runs, I'll be on him and he'll win. And next time he was on him, and I never forgot the name of the horse, Busy Balbo. I forget the name of the trainer, but I never forgot the name of the horse. And Walter rode him next time, and he got him out of the gate in front, and he won. And I'm thinking all the memories that go past that Haddonfield Road stable gate. And then on Route 73, there's only one thing left of the old racetrack, and it was a clubhouse red brick building. It was the clubhouse entrance, we used to call it. If you parked across the street, or if you parked at one of the lots across the street, you walked through that clubhouse entrance. And I just got a petition. They said they wanted to tear that building down. It doesn't interfere with anything. And I'm thinking, why tear down the last live memory of Cherry Hill and how it transformed the whole area. Garden State really transformed the area when it opened up and brought a lot of revenue. And I shop at Wegmans, and I always tell you I go in there and shop. And I'm thinking everybody used to complain about the traffic the racetrack brought to town for a few months a year, and now everybody's saying how much they miss it. And I'm thinking, yeah. And look at this complex that's built there. It's more traffic there. They had to take the old. They took the roundabout circle out and had to make it into an intersection. There's so much traffic. And I don't hear anybody complaining. But I signed a petition, do not tear down that clubhouse entrance gate. It's such it's on the road, and it's a beautifully structured small gate, doesn't interfere with anything. And it just brings back a lot of memories of how Garden State helped to build these small towns, Cherry Hill, Haddon Township, Haddonfield, Collingswood. Garden State built the revenue up on these small towns. And, that's when we had the rickshaw and the Latin Casino, Sunelli's. All these places or restaurants are gone. Garden State's gone. And I have so many memories that go with the places that are gone. And it was the one memory I can remember staying at the Rickshaw Inn and having a party. And I don't know how I didn't get arrested. I went down the hallway nude with our partying at the Rickshaw Inn. And none of these places are even there anymore. I saw Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin at the Latin Casino. Not there anymore. Had many of function at Sonelli's restaurant or the Sans Souci or, these other restaurants that are no longer there. But don't tear down that one clubhouse gate. I hope they don't. I signed a petition. Leave it up.
Well, and it's funny because I just put a search in. There was I happen to be a subscriber to the Inquirer, the Philadelphia Inquirer, more for Eagles coverage than anything. And Inquirer does a great job. And there was a story just a couple of days ago, Tony, about this. In fact, the story was on Monday. Residents are trying to save a piece of Cherry Hill pop culture history from the 50s and 60s.
I'm so glad. I hope they can do so. And I'm glad they haven't forgot what helped to generate a lot of revenue and even population. I go down Haddonfield Road and I'll see somebody walking down the road and it brings back memories. Geez, there was guys that rubbed horses, maybe didn't have transportation, cars, and they'd be walking to the Cherry Hill Mall down these roads, and I'm thinking, gee, it brings back so many memories. And that gate doesn't interfere with anything. I just hope they just leave it as is. It just is a reminder of what Garden State did for these towns around here, and it did so much.
Well, and there's pictures. There's a picture of it, and this is an extensive piece. I'll put a link up. There's also Tony. There's also a picture of April 14th, 1977, of the entire building and smoldering.
Did you see the picture? Did I ever send you the picture of me, my ex-wife, and agent sitting there? I'm still in Mr. Ambese's Colors Briardale farm. We left through the second-story windows, and somebody snapped a picture and sent it to me from the press. And the place is an inferno, the smoke. And I'm standing there with my agent on one side and my ex-wife on the other side. And we're watching it burn to the ground. And then we went in, because when Rick Wilson won the race before it caught fire. We're galloping back and we see smoke and said, hey, Rick, maybe we'll get out of here early today. Like kids getting out of school. We figured get out of here early. But we went back, we checked for the next race, and about 20 minutes went by and they said, evacuate the building. The fire is out of control. When we went to go down the second story, we were on the Jock's room. We went down the hallway. By the time you got near the old wooden steps, there was orange flames and smoke, and you couldn't even get near the steps. Went back to the Jock's room into the rec hall by the lunch counter, hung out the second story windows, dropped down to a porch roof. We threw all our tack out the window too. We went out the windows, hit a porch roof, hung off the porch roof, and tried to hit the top of the paddock fence on the tunnel fence. And if you didn't, you just fell another 3 feet. And that's how we left the building. And I got that picture, and I'm thinking I'll send it to you if you didn't. Yeah. If I didn't. But it's an interesting picture, and it's so many memories. And I'm glad the township does have some feeling for that gate. And the other day, I'm on Route 38, and there's the old sign on one of the overpasses. It said, and the next exit you would get off of Route 38 and you go on to 70. Or whatever, Kings Highway, whatever it was. And it says Garden State Park, and it's the old sign that says Garden State Park. It's still up there. They never even took that down. I thought, I was, every once in a while I get these nostalgic memories, and I'm thinking, man, on certain days I can remember going over there late to ride the last couple races, or boy, what a miserable day, all the rain and everything last couple of days. Boy, it was miserable going over there and riding races, and it's raining and cold and whatever, but it brings back memories like that. But I hope they preserve that building.
I'm going to send the link up to it, and there's a series of great pictures of there's one guy in particular that is clearly spearheading this, and the Cerrucci is let me see. Cerrucci is it Sam? Let me see, or Chris? What is it? I just saw it. Dan Cerrucci, and I'll put the link up. It's an online petition, and it really is a handsome little building that that should be preserved. I'm glad you brought this up. I've told you this story every time the burning comes up of the building. I tell the story of my father taking me to Philadelphia. I had college interviews and visits at Penn and at Haverford, scheduled for April 15th. So my father and I, my father knew the area very well from years of working with Jerry Woolman, who of course owned the Eagles and was a builder, and my dad's construction company, Green Manor Construction, worked a lot with Jerry Woolman. So he was in Philadelphia all the time. PSFS used to finance a lot of their construction, Society for Savings. And we get off of the Garden State Parkway at Cherry Hill, and the roads are all, there's like blockades. And so my father's front, he's like, well, I don't know what's going on here. So he kind of comes around one of the circles. There's all those traffic circles, and the next thing we know, we come up like a side street to abut 70, and in front of us is the smoldering remains of Garden State Park. Yeah, and the roads were deserted because they were blocked from either direction, and I'll never forget it. I mean, just unbelievable. And we ended up working our way across the Walt Whitman Bridge, but I'll never forget it. And then, to have the opportunity to talk to you and JJ and everybody else that was involved. And then I got to go to the new Garden State Park when I was working in the food business. Tartan Foods had a night at Garden State, and I got at least to go to the new building before it. I mean, that was the most short-lived, the most beautiful new track that was short-lived. I mean, that was tragic.
Yeah, I always say, I rode there when it burnt down and left through the windows. I rode there when they rebuilt it and tore it down. And now I do my grocery shopping and go to Home Depot there. I was saying one day, I wish they would just put some kind of memento up of where the wire was, like they did at Franklin Mills Mall, which Liberty Bell was at Franklin Mills Mall. And they have one by one of the stores, this is where the wire was. And I'm thinking, man, it's interesting. Here I rode horses past this point, and now I'm buying socks and underwear there.
You're the greatest. Mig is listening in as well. Kind of fun. Well, Tony, I wanted to get to you this morning, and I appreciate it. The weather's warming up.
I'll be out there, and you tell Mig, he's one of my favorite. And anytime we're out there again, you can come up on the inside of me, Mig. I'll let you through. Don't worry about it. You're the man. But the weather's getting good, and I'm going out there. It's been a little nasty the last couple of days, but I got some horses to get on, and I'm going to start to feel like a jockey again, an old retired jockey. You take care. Keep up the good work, Steve. I'm going to try to listen to you now and get straightened out here. Appreciate all you do for racing. You're a booster, and we need more people like you in the game. Thank you for all you do. I love you, brother.
Love you too. Tony Black, everybody. And some interesting some interesting topic that Tony brought up here. And I'm going to send out I'll send out the links to this as well. I just retweeted Dave Grenning latched on to a tribute to Letterman by Dick Girardi. Larry Letterman, the very best of us, and just a very nice, looks like a very nice ode to him. And I'll send you the link for that as well. And this online petition, why not? Let's, and you're going to see it's really kind of a cool, just a small brick building with 3 wrought iron gates. And in fact, looks like it could use a freshening. And I don't know, maybe you could turn it into who knows, you could turn it into like a little miniature museum. This room, it looks like in a small office area where people could, maybe. All right, look for that. Going to get to Jeff Franklin, and we'll dive into win using Thorograph conversation. Where is that coming from? I'm sorry about that. I know people go crazy when there's a ding in the background. Oh, it's Tony sending me his picture. That's funny. I'll put that up too. All right, let's start doing some handicapping. Let's look at some sheets with Crafty. And I should note one thing I forgot. I keep forgetting to mention on Thursdays, and of course, with the NFL season having ended, we haven't talked to Dave Hill. But you'll note, or maybe remember that Dave was up for an award from poker interests for one of the pieces that he did, and he won that award. And I know I retweeted it, but I haven't mentioned publicly. Congratulations to Dave Hill, who, speaking of literate and lyrical, he won that World Poker. I don't know. I don't know what the organization, what the presenting, but it looked like a big full ballroom, and he gave a terrific acceptance speech. So congratulations to Dave. Jeff Franklin in the background joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning.
I'm just reaching for last week. We'll do some recapping. You want to dive in? And of course.
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to take the mic there. Okay. So the Honey Fox, I don't know about you, but I was about 18 million miles off on that one. Chili Flag won the race, and I viewed her as a marginal contender. Although, to both of our credit, we recognized going in that the race was a blanket race. Anybody could have won, but she would have been about my 5th or 6th choice. And the filly I was hoping would move forward, Spanson, did not. So that was that. And then, of course, the Fountain of Youth turned out to be just a non-race, as it were, with the 2 scratches.
Well, and between locked early and then Victory Avenue in the morning, and then Speak. Seconds before, it was a non-factor from a betting standpoint. I will say for all the I don't know, just sort of frustration that people have expressed. I was thinking back to the conversation I had with Gargan on Monday, and for Dornick, sometimes when a horse is forced into something that isn't necessarily their, what they're going to be doing, under ideal circumstances, let's say a full field circumstances, it ends up being good for them. And we occasionally you've got the occasional speed horse or horse that likes to attend the pace that misses the break, and then has to get a lesson essentially in rating or coming from off the pace and passing horses, and all of a sudden they had something basically foisted on them, and they learn a new trick, and it adds to them to their ability and to their arsenal as a racehorse as they mature. Chuck Simon and I were talking this morning as I was driving in, and we were talking about this crop, which looks like it's going to be a very solid group of 3-year-olds. But there's going to be an extensive set of them by the time we get past the first Saturday in April that are going to be really lightly raced. So having something happen to a horse that forces them into a not necessarily an uncomfortable position, but just something new to them, a lot of times it ends up being a long-term benefit.
That's right. And I remember many years ago, I was representing Robbie Davis, and Robbie was riding a filly for Richard Mandela named Reluctant Guest. She eventually won the Beverly D. And during the running of, I don't know, the second or third time he rode her, something happened where he had to change his hold or steady or something like that. And he told me afterward, he said, "Oh, now I really know how to ride this filly." He said, "I never would have done this," but he said, I learned this, and and boom, from there, I think we won the next 3 Grade 1 stakes on her. So, rather be lucky than good, right? So, yeah, in this case, a new talent. There you go. A new weapon in the arsenal.
Yeah, it's especially the ones that, that either get tangled up or have horses, compromise them off the break, and suddenly they find themselves
exactly
behind horses and taking, whether it's taking dirt or whether it's, just circling the field or, coming up in between horses, and it's something they've never done. Invariably, you end up, they end up, and it's not something you can teach. I mean, I know, for instance, Todd Pletcher, you'll see Pletcher when he has sets go out, and sometimes when he does sets of 3, when he's trying to educate a young horse, and he'll place them in each of the 3 slots between horses, on the outside, on the inside, and you're basically trying to get a horse to learn how to be comfortable wherever, with whatever circumstance they're going to encounter. And we say, oh well, they're animals. They're animals with the mental capacity of a 3-year-old child, and so you can teach them. And there's some that are you only have to show them something once, and it registers. So there's a lot that goes into this, and a good horse that takes care of itself and is an easy keeper, as they say, and one that can be taught lessons. They become that. That's what was so amazing about American Pharoah, that you had Baffert had a horse that did anything he was asked.
Oh my gosh, yes. What a brilliant racehorse. Fully agreed. So, so that's the recap from last week. And do you mind if I dive into the Florida Oaks?
No, let's go. Go ahead. Absolutely.
I am fascinated by the rail filly, Poolside with Slim. Her numbers are, in the top 2 or 3 in the race, but more importantly, for those folks that have the Thoroughgraph sheets that we email out every week in front of you, her dirt races should just be a portent of things to come, because now she's going to be on the turf. This is what she's bred to do, top and bottom. I could see her moving up 4 to 5 lengths and with a good trip, cremating this field. I'm just praying that she gets a good trip and see if she moves up like I think she will. The Thorograph Index on the lower left, for the folks that have this in front of them, will show just from a sire profile, Steve, Jerry's assigned a 17 and a quarter to all the Churchill's dirt races, all the progeny of Churchill, whereas his turf progeny run essentially 11 and a quarters. So we're talking about, that's about as wide a spread as you'll see. Now, granted, it's a small sample, but it is an interesting data point. And we're talking about Irish breeding top and bottom. I can't wait to see this filly on the turf. How about you?
Well, I mentioned poolside with Slim, and happened, have gotten very friendly with Patrick Lewis. He's come in on our Motown 3-year-old, and last week was about as frustrating a scenario as an owner could possibly endure. He's part of the Victory Avenue team. And even the week before at Tampa in that turf sprint, dropped the jock in the filly race. So and we actually had a frustrating experience with Landauer's debut. So Patrick is due for some good luck, frankly, and they've been really excited by what progress poolside with Slim has made with that debut at Turfway. Just missed behind not just a nice horse, that nice as pie, but there's been that's become a key race, that debut, January 3rd, and then the romping victory. But absolutely designed for turf. Not that synthetic doesn't mirror turf for the most part. So poolside with Slim, absolutely a major player in here, and paired up 10 3/4. Coming in, which essentially is as fast as really only one other. I think it was
Destiny Star.
Yeah, Tim. I mentioned this morning when I went over the draws of these races, and the Tim Ham's filly, absolutely a Catholic boy filly. The Catholic boys. They did not have a great start, it seemed, as 2-year-olds, but it looks like, and let's be honest, he was a horse himself that didn't get good until his 3-year-old year. It feels like they're going to be, steady developing progeny types. And that was a big, really the last 2 steps forward. And the transition from a 5-furlong turf sprint to the 1-mile allowance win. Also a good sign, and absolutely. Then you got to fold in what we're going to see from the Chad Brown fillies,
right? And not to mention Austere. So, wow. So the race gets complicated to me if poolside doesn't fire, because I can make the case. Naturally, when we see certain fillies like an Austere that ran a 10 early on at Kentucky Downs and now has had 6 months to mature, well, she'd project around a 7 or 8, something like that, on Saturday. And so all of these fillies are going to run new tops. Several of them will run new tops. And so, again, you all know now that I'm interested in the rail filly. Let's see how the race develops thereafter.
In terms of the figures and the pattern reads, dynamic pricing from Chad, and this is nobody has done more to expose American handicappers to obscure stallions from around the world than Seth Klarman. They've had so much fun, he and Chad, and the parties involved in finding offbeat pedigrees, and that actually includes domestics. I mean, as it happens, Klarman is. You think about cloud computing, for instance. I mean, he's had more success with fairly mundane stallions. He's made a habit of buying at sales, buying the best physical individuals of what otherwise were not heralded pages. And here's a Night of Thunder filly that is paired 10s and change. Dynamic pricing. I'll be anxious to see what the pricing is when the odds are attached to this field. And then weigh the risks. The Mendelssohn filly, and they drew next to each other. Jose Ortiz aboard dynamic pricing. IRAD aboard weigh the risks. Starts off a little slower, Jeff, but we've seen this from Chad before.
Yes.
Here's a pair of 13s.
Yes.
I mean, this horse is going to go forward, certainly, and can she go forward enough, to impact this? She's going to be probably at least twice, maybe 3 times the price, I'm going to guess. I mean, for those looking just at buyers, for instance, a pair of 62s for weigh the risks, a 73 and an 86 in the 2 starts for dynamic pricing. So, weigh the risks is going to be what, 8-1 and probably 5-2 on dynamic pricing.
Yeah, those are good estimates, actually. And I think taking the segue back to American Pharaoh, of course, Bill Mott's filly, also has really no established level. She could jump forward. And I happen to love fillies that have a little bit of rest in between their starts. She's been given about 70 days or so. This is perfect for her. So again, what a nice group of fillies. And I think we'll let the odd board guide us to some extent. At least I will. But I think you've nailed a couple of intriguing options here. And I agree with you. How many times with Chad's horses have we seen them lay low and then they don't move forward 2 points, they move forward 7 or 8? I mean, the guy's just a brilliant developer of a racehorse. What can I say? Well,
and this weigh the risks happens to fit that profile that I bring up on a regular basis, because the last time we saw her was in the Maiden Breaker closing weekend at Saratoga. So September 3rd. So she had all of September, October, November, December, January, February. Yep. She's been off 6 months. This is, people are going to see those figures and they're going to say, well, she's a little slow coming in. Except that this isn't September. This isn't October of last year. It's 6 months later. And obviously they put her away. She's been working steadily since January. So it's not, they made the choice. They broke the maiden, and, whether there was some kind of something, that necessitated putting her away for a little bit. So let's look, for instance, at Mendelssohn's numbers from 2 to 3. On the third graph index, and when you're looking at these sheets, folks, look at Mendelssohn and look at the TGI, the third graph index, for 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5 and up. And you can see that the index for Mendelssohn's is a 19.25. And then they improve on average. They improve 4 points. Their average as 3-year-olds is a 15.25. So that's 4 points of improvement. Well, let's consider that weigh the risks can come back Saturday and be potentially 4 points better. That's a 9. And that's exactly where her stablemate is, and where Poolside with Slim is, and where Tim Ham's Destiny Star is. So she's as fast probably on healthy age development as the horses that have recency. So that's why, 6-1, let's say, give or take, is going to be value on weigh the risks.
And, you just use a couple of words, age development, that I don't use enough, but it's very descriptive. And it's a great reminder to folks that are looking at the sheets that you don't take a point in time as an August 2-year-old and consider that to be definitive. You use that as a launching pad to project to a new number as a 3-year-old, as you're saying. And so an 8 or a 9 would not be even remotely unreasonable, particularly for somebody like Chad, who does not send out a short horse.
What else caught your eye? Some isolated tops maybe that and some hints at potential. You mentioned Austere. We should probably include in the conversation Whit Watersrand, the Gary Barber from Cassie, who draws wide because this is first-time turf for this daughter of Connect. And she, had a very good 2-year-old year. You understand Cassie and Barber trying her on dirt. That came in the forward gal. And then, essentially they're telling you, well, she's a synthetic / turf horse. She's already won a grade 3 going the trip, the mile and a 16th, and she's going to be 10-1.
Yeah. And, that pose to me naturally is potentially a killer, particularly with lightly raced horses going into that first turn. Gosh, I always want to just cover my eyes and just say, please don't get carried out by somebody, please. So I guess I discount that. Maybe I put too much weighting in it, but it scares the pants off me.
Well,
so
they're coming out of the chute. And so essentially Gallardo, certainly.
No, that's right. That's right. Okay,
Gallardo has as much of a knowledge of this course as anybody. And, by the time they reach the main oval, this is a horse that likes to stalk. You would think that Gallardo can find a comfortable place. In fact, the 3 horses inside of her, Dynamic Pricing, Weigh the Risks, and Dancing in Dixie, they all feel like horses that are going to, I don't want to say dawdle. Really, the first horse with any early lick appears to be Destiny Star. I would think Gallardo is able to find a comfortable spot in the 2-3 path pretty easily by the time they exit the chute.
Good point. Yep, the race shape does favor her being able to get good position. You're right, and for her, hopefully the field will spread out and it shouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah,
No, you're right. I'm standing down from my earlier comment. Okay,
all right. Who else? What else is in here?
Well, I'm really a little interested in Pharaoh's Wine, Dale Roman's filly, just because she made a quarter point move, and often, two of my favorite words, coiled spring. Sometimes it's as if she just is getting ready to explode now. These horses sometimes fit into patterns, or sometimes they tip when they're about to do something they've never done before. And that's a pattern that's often worked for me, where the quarter point move off of an extended base. She had a few races pretty much in that area, and particularly that she was off poorly. Wouldn't surprise me if she moved forward. So, and the other one we did not discuss, Destiny Star, given the speed, she does have the fastest sheer number in the race on this turf course. So if she should turn out to be controlling speed, that would be certainly something to contend with.
I want to bring up 2 fairly proficient turf trainers. Mott has got Waskasui and Clement has got Style Points. Start with Style Points because this is an interesting sheet. 16, 13 and a half, 11 and a quarter, marching forward. And you don't see this too often. If you look at the thorough pattern, and thorough pattern is the line that shows the number, the starts with horses that are showing this pattern. In this particular case, it's a top, obviously, in the first start, then a new top, then another new top. According to the thorough pattern, and there's only 7 other comparable scenarios to use, 71%, 5 of the 7 horses that started like this, that ran 3 straight tops, run a new top. So you have to at least think that Style Points is a player in here. And then there's Waskasui. I'm going to guess that's how it's pronounced, with a pair of 10s off of the November maiden breaker, and then the try at Gulfstream in the Ginger Brew, where she was a solid third behind Ozara and Life's an Audible. And of course, Life's an Audible came back to win her subsequent stake start, and then just got beat Saturday at Gulfstream.
Right. And Bill's filly, if you really look at it, is kind of a classic developing pattern. All she's done, it seems, is move forward and overcome every challenge put in front of her. And there's that quarter point move again. So coiled spring, getting ready to rock. She's possibly my second choice in the race.
Well, and this, you can go into this race, and it's very funny. David Aragona, I just retweeted David, who said, with all due respect to everything else going on at Tampa Saturday, the best race of the day is the Florida Oaks.
Right.
So David, sees the same thing. This really does feel like a race where you go in and you've got your own pecking order. But when it comes to building your ticket, you're absolutely going to play the board. And, you very well may see a scenario. I mean, with a field this size, you've got the option. I mean, there's going to be, I would say, more than one of this group of 12 that is going to end up being absolutely lost on the board and slip through the cracks. There's going to be somebody 12-1, 14-1 here that has no business being that price. And that, as Thorograph players, you then key off of a horse like that, a horse that's just a silly overlay given what their pattern indicates that they are fully capable of winning. And that's, that's how Jerry plays, and Alan and everybody there's plenty of Thorograph users that only bet those horses, and your strike rate, you don't have to be right as often when the typical horse that you key is a $30 horse. You can clean up a lot of messes with the kinds of horses that present themselves with this opportunity.
Exactly. And this game is not, to me, about picking winners. It's about picking value, isolating value. And so I'd rather pass on a race where I just have no idea and wait for that, that 14-1 shot that should be 9-2.
Yep.
There you go.
That is what we're after here. And that's why we're doing these exercises.
That's right.
I'm just watching here as, there's no racing today, but they've got the Great All going here, and this is the second pass of the Great All, essentially taking everything from the rail and spreading it out into the middle of the track. They've been working this track the entire morning after training ended, easily the last hour and a half, 2 hours, and. Interesting. We'll see if this is the last time they use the Great All. And the Great All, of course, scrapes. It's the blade that the way a track, the crown of a track. Then you get weather. The track slides. The dirt, the cushion slides toward the rail, and that's why they have to do this. And they redistribute the cushion, and they try to do it evenly, but there's conditions that will sometimes, that's how you get biases occasionally. And I haven't looked ahead at the weather tomorrow and Saturday, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and tell you that tomorrow speed should be good here, assuming that we don't get any weather interruption. All right, let's shift our gears. Unless you looked at anything else at Tampa that you want to any.
No. I think it's okay. Let's go west now.
All right, the Beholder Mile, and I wanted to do a turf race and a dirt race, and I was excited that the Beholder Mile came up the way it did. And for those that are looking, just as an aside, if you're going to take the Saturday Santa Anita card as part of your selection for Thoroughgraph Saturday. The Santa Isabel, I know it's being presented and nothing else, but you're going to be surprised when you see the figs, because it's not and nobody else. That's a good race. But then there's this Beholder Mile where Todd Pletcher and Mike Rapoli, who gobbled up Interstate Daydream, they're sending her out for a Grade 1 chance and trying to enhance the value of this 5-year-old mare, making her 5-year-old mare debut. But there's a Dare Manor for Baffert, last seen in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Never really got in position that she likes. She typically likes to be on the point, and she was trailing throughout and wasn't able to make up ground, but only beaten 3. And then there's some other intriguing prospects. How did you see the Beholder Mile?
Well, obviously, Interstate Daydream will all be fascinated to see how she goes from east to west, new connections, would seem to have a running style that could be interesting here. Before I get too much into the horses, I have to remind everybody, we've had this bizarre interruption of training week in and week out here. I'm looking for my office here in Monrovia, not far from Santa Anita. Beautiful skies. I don't know why they shut the track in today, but they did. So this interrupted training has been a variable for West Coast handicapping, as horses sometimes 1, 2, 3, 4 days are forced to stall, to stay in their stalls or just walk, I should say, barn walk. All that being said, I don't think it's a major factor just losing a day of training today. But we do have a really interesting scenario as Michael McCarthy's filly, Sweet Azteca, who is a fast filly, is going to try 2 turns for the first time. And I don't see anything pedigree-wise, et cetera, that says she's supposed to blast off going 2 turns. But having watched her visually, she's a bit of a beast. And so it'll be interesting to see her in a Dairy Manor, who from the 2-hole, JJ's going to blast off with her for sure. So this could be a really interesting pace scenario. And not to mention Green Up and some of the others. So interesting, again, that Interstate Daydream, I think, could lay back and make a really nice run at them. From a numbers perspective, there are about 3 fillies, a Dairy Manor, Green Up, and Interstate Daydream, that all run somewhere between a 1 to they're very, very consistent mares. So to me, the intrigue of the race, east to west, and Sweet Azteca going 2 turns for the first time.
I can see it. The interesting horse that for me that I was surprised that I expected to be excited about, and then when I looked at her page, I've been a Desert Dawn fan from early on, and she's amassed she should go blast through $1 million in earnings on Saturday, but I was surprised that the La Cañada victory really was not, anything from a fig standpoint. It wasn't anything, revolutionary. She, in fact, she actually moved a little bit backwards to a 4.5, and she has never, shockingly, she's never gotten below a 3, and yet she's able to compete at the highest level. I mean, what do you make of her? Because she's a horse that a lot of us like to bet, and she just, obviously running into a Dare Manor didn't help all last summer, but and then Idiomatic in the distaff, of course, and even Midnight Memories in the Bayacoa over at Los Al. But she has kept the nicest company and runs consistently well without winning much.
We've seen what she's all about. She's told us she'll run a 3 or a 4. She's consistent. And if a 3 or 4 can win a race, she can win it. But it's not going to win on Saturday.
No, and
Nope.
and it's funny. Cupid has got a handful of isolated, really nice horses, but has been just sort of a meh stallion. He's got 16 stake winners, including Desert Dawn. She's got something, or Cupid has something that is a curiosity, and it's a very small sample, but the 5 and up number with just 33 starts, and this is her first crop of 5-year-olds. Right now, it doesn't look like they're getting much better. They improve considerably from 3 to 4, but it schools out as a mature. Horses keep maturing up till age 5, and it doesn't feel like the Cupid progeny are going to have a next level, like let's say the way English Channels do as older horses.
Yeah, and Steve, on this show, you cite that aspect of the TGIs that I think is very, very overlooked. And when you've got, in some cases, 500 or 600 horses that are giving you indications that, yeah, I'm gonna be better from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, whatever it may be, and you overlook that, you do that at your own peril. It's great data, and as handicappers, I think it's really overlooked, and yet you bring it up a lot, and I think it's smart.
It's one of my favorite things. Look, I sheet methodology between Thorograph and Ragozin, I mean, have really kind of revolutionized in a lot of ways handicapping and also training patterns. I've got a very famous Bobby Frankel anecdote that you'll appreciate in a second, but to me, what makes this product, the premium performance figure product of choice is the trainer stats and the stallion stats, and all of these added. I mean, Jerry could have simply, created the product and just work the figures and just provide a performance figure, but he's constantly adding innovation. And things like the index for the stallion and the thorough pattern, these are things that are a value add that are just make, to me, is the differential when it comes to this. And because listen, this is expensive. It's not a cheap product, but it's a product that the minute you cash your first ticket, you realize it pays for itself essentially. And those added categories and those added data points is what makes this invaluable.
Well, and to support or paraphrase what you just said, I've been using the Thorograph since I was an agent for Gary Stevens back in the 90s, and everybody said to me, "What do you think sets the product apart?" And here's the whole key: the sheets are not a snapshot in time. They're basically a holistic view of a horse's accomplishments and an ability to project reasonably what's going to come in the next start. And many other handicapping data products they're snapshots in time, and now it's up to you to figure things out. But not so with the sheets. It's all about what's coming up in the next race. And so I've been hooked for 30 years on the darn things. So thank you.
My Frankel anecdote. When Saratoga customers would go to the binocular stand and buy the Thorograph book, the booklet, that was collated and would come up on the bus from the city. Frankel used to hang out at the barbecue with us, and somebody had the booklet and asked Frankel for an autograph, and he signed it. My horses don't bounce, Bobby Frankel.
Oh, is that funny?
Yeah, because it was
so funny.
It was,
and you know something about Bobby, who I was privileged to call a friend, a real friend, and he would tell jocks when they would ride races, save ground. I don't care what happens during the run. And this is basically his turf horses because that's what he specialized in, of course. I don't care what happens. Save ground till you hit the point of the last turn, and then what happens, happens. If anything happens during the running of the race and you lose because of that, you will ride the horse back. I will not take you off. And so he understood ground loss. And Bobby and I had, I don't know, quadrillion conversations about sheep theory and how to win races and such. And he was just a bloody genius, that guy. He really saw things that other people didn't see. And it was a pleasure to know him and talk to him. I miss him.
Yep. We had this conversation about Larry Letterman, 67. There's no Bobby should be around too. I mean, how old was Bobby when he passed?
Like late 60s, 68, I think he was.
In that range. Yeah. I mean, certainly no more than 70. A privilege and funny, acerbic and funny, and literally, came out of the grandstand at Aqueduct, and just said to him, was watching horses and said, "Jesus, I can do this. I can train these horses." Became a legend. Amazing.
And the thing that I love so much about Bobby was, for those of us who got to hang out with him after the races, like so many guys, he was so intense in the morning and at the races. He really just poured his guts into it. But then you take him out and have a Long Island iced tea with him afterward, and he was such a crack up. And for so many people, again, who only saw him as the Bobby Frankel master trainer, they never had a chance to see that side of him. In fact, Johnny D and I used to take him out for Del Mar all the time. We'd stay out till wee hours and just listen to Frankel stories, and they would go on and on and on. It was, what a joy. Boy, how lucky I was. So, Bobby Frankel.
Well, I'm glad we went in this direction. I appreciate it. All right, Jeff, what else? Anything else?
No, except looking forward to talk to you next week. Hopefully, we'll have some additional cash in our betting accounts.
Exactly right. And next week's a quiet. We'll be at Vegas. And oh, by the way, we how about a quick advisory? Are you coming, by the way, to NHC?
No. I have some other business. In fact, the next couple of weeks are crazy for me business-wise, so I won't be able to make it.
Well, because for those, any of you that use Thorograph and are going out to Vegas, let Jeff, let Jerry, let anybody in the office know, because of course figures will be available.
That's right. And to that end, if anybody does need to contact me on anything you hear on the show or any questions at all, it's easy. I'm Jeff@Thorograph.com, and I answer each and every email that I receive.
Jeff Franklin, everybody. Crafty JF. Not that he's much of a Twitterer. No. But that he is on there, and you should maybe wade into it a little bit, and some information, some thoughts, opinions.
Go up, I'll do it, Steve.
I love it. Jeff, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you. I'll be at Vegas next Thursday. It'll be first day broadcasting from the Horseshoe.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much. That was great. Jeff Franklin. There's potential here for actually, and with Rich going to be sitting in Vegas, there's a potential here these last 20 minutes. I'm going to see if he will join us. I'm not positive. I know that he and I had talked about it last week. You available? Do you want to do this now? All right, here we go.
Car driving to the Houston Astros baseball game. I guess the service will stay up.
There you go. Where's their Osceola, right?
They're playing the Cardinals today in Jupiter in Roger Dean Stadium in Jupiter.
Very nice. All right. Well, Rusty Arnold joins us, and I guess the word is out, Rusty, because a statement from you about a 7-day suspension, and you had let me know last week that this was coming. Your thoughts? Explain, your reaction to this and your approach to it.
Well, yeah, I knew it was coming. I was a little bit disappointed yesterday that I read about it on their website without any contact from them to tell me that the B sample had come back and that they were going to put it on our website. I thought that I should have gained the respect of a phone call or an email, but I didn't. And I had people started calling me that it was on the website, so there it is.
This is explain what the positive is, and what your thoughts were when you were initially contacted, and what the metabolite represents.
Well, we ran a Philly, a maiden at Turfway on December 27th, I think 26th or 7th. I think it's 27th. And 31 days later, I got an email from Lisa that she had come back positive for metabolite of tramadol. Tramadol is a human painkiller. I think they use it in dogs too. I'm not positive with the drug. I know it's a post-operation painkiller. Don't know where it came from. Don't know how it got there. Have no idea. Can tell you one thing: have not given Figgy tramadol or any horse that I've ever had in my possession tramadol. So we were charged, and your options were to accept a 15-day penalty, a loss of purse, and 2 points against your record, and a $1,000 fine, or ask for a split sample, see what it comes back, see if it confirmed it. Obviously, I took the split, which was $1,250, a little more, than you would think, but I had to, take a chance that it would come back negative. But for one, the owner was losing $40,000. And then after another, it was on December 27th, and it was yesterday was March 6th before I heard back from them. And they again, opened up the website, people did, was on there that evidently the B sample had come back. They were disqualifying the horse and taking a purse. And in the end, they said, if you plead guilty and don't go to a hearing, we'll only give you 7 days, which I chose to do because I've got Keeneland and Churchill coming up, which I spend all my winter getting ready for those beats. I didn't want to have this happen in the middle of it. So that's where I stand right now. I don't deny that tramadol was in the horse because science tells you it was. But I don't think there's a case more of contamination, because of the level I've been told is so minute that it's unbelievable. I've got it, and after talking to some chemists, it was a extremely, extremely low level of tramadol, and we think they're getting these things in a receiving barn from either horses the day before, horses that morning. These stalls are used multiple times. They're used in the morning for work and go stalls where people ship in, work, and leave. And they're used the night before up until about 10 or 11 o'clock. They're cleaned out. Are they sanitized? No. Are they disinfected? No. They're cleaned out. And I think there's enough, the way the testing has got so good that they can pick up such low levels. And I think there's going to have to be some common sense used before this is all over at these low levels. That my information is that the level of this horse, and I've got it on a paper right in front of me, is so low it's like a tenth of what a human would be affected by. It has zero effect on a horse.
Rusty, you've got a very detailed and articulate statement that HBPA released, and you told me last week that you were not going to fight this because you wanted it to be an opportunity, essentially, to essentially stand up for horsemen under the current scenario that everybody is facing. No one is going to confuse you with somebody that's notorious for taking an edge. And I imagine that your situation will affect a number of people who want to just summarily support whatever Heisa and Haiwu is doing as something that's going to save the industry. This is not saving the industry.
Well, I was never anti-Heisa. I think a governing body is good, but as I said, the Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL all have players' unions, and they work on the process with the ownership. They have representation, and my biggest deal and why I wanted to speak up is because I think we have to have some representation at the table. Our livelihoods are out there. I mean, the gentleman that got the 2-year ban 2 nights later than me, I don't know him. I think it starts with an H. But my understanding is he has 5 horses. He was 4 or 5 stalls away from me, has never had any type of major infractions, and he had a banned substance, not a controlled substance, and you're out. You're out immediately. They don't even question. You don't get to defend yourself. You get nothing. And I just think some of it's got to stop. And there's got to be some common sense use of these things. And when there's this much, my understanding is there's 30 million prescriptions of tramadol out in the market as of now. And there's that much out there. It's there. It's real. It's not fake. It's not made up. And we've got to stop these accusations of every horse that gets these as somebody's giving it to them. Because I don't think anybody is intentionally giving it in these circumstances. And I think Heisa can tell the difference. I think they know who's intentionally trying to cheat and who isn't. And right now, they're not discriminated between the two.
Is there in the process, and you bring up one part of the process which has vexed them a little bit, and that is their communication skills, and in terms of essentially posting the results of something without giving you any notice, as the second half of the testing process. I mean, I had asked you last week if you would reached out to Alan Foreman. What part of this can you envision being improved?
Well, I will say that Haiwu had an attorney. Her name was Geneva. I've got all of it written down that I spoke to by email on several occasions that could not have been better. She could not have been nicer and could not have been better at helping me through the process. She helped me answer the charges. She helped me get the email in. She told me what days they needed to be in, what days your answers needed to be in. And she even after yesterday when the charges were levied, she helped me do these forms to accept the penalty. It's called an acceptance of the infraction, and she led me through the whole process. I couldn't thank her enough. She was great. I did talk to Alan Foreman on Monday, the first time I ever talked to him, and I said, look, it's been 37 days since they took the B sample, and I've had no contact other than that they took the B sample, and he said, I'm going to check into it. Alan was great also. And he said that he checked into it, he talked to them, and that thought they would have it back on Wednesday, and that they would give me the results on Wednesday. I had failed, or had reluctantly, my fault, not told my owners, other than the one that owned that filly, that there was a chance I was going to be facing sanctions. I didn't want to do that until the B sample came back. So I thought as soon as it came back, I would have hours or days to explain it to everybody. And then there it came. no time. I had owners calling me, telling me that I was getting suspended, which I thought was very disappointing. I felt that was on Ben Mosier because my contact with him has not been pretty. It's been a little bit bitter, and I thought that he could have made an attempt to let it know, and I'm not positive, and I have no proof. I'm not sure he intentionally didn't put it out that way.
Rusty, for those that aren't familiar with your record, you're 70 or 78 wins away from 2,000 in your career. You've had the same size barn forever. You train only the horses that you can put your hands on daily. What, if any, prior medication violations have you dealt with?
In 2000, I had a Rimadyl positive for a filly at Delaware Park. That was in my 24th year of training. It was my first one, and she was on Rimadyl. It was obviously a barn mistake. She didn't come off of it, in time. We didn't withdraw her in time. We were fine. We lost the purse, and that was the last one I had until this one, and that was 20-some years ago. I take that back. We had an overage of Banamine about 15 years ago because of vet practice, not point anybody out. They had two vets treat the same horse on the same day at different times. It was just a mistake. The horse ran, and it wasn't even a loss of purse. It was a $250 fine. Those are my two medication problems in 48 years. And I hold that, very dear to me. I think for nothing else in this business, I have whether I'm not going in the Hall of Fame, I don't have that kind of record, but I tell you what I have the respect of my peers that I do everything the right way. And that means a lot.
Well, I wanted that out there because for all of the aspirations and all of the intentions of those that wanted to see this authority put in place, the Rusty Arnolds of the world are not the problem. If this does not galvanize some people, then I don't know what will. Because there's been any number. Mike Lauer, another guy. There's been these small. You mentioned some small outfits. There's a story that I'm sure will come to light from a guy with 8 horses, and they're ready to drive out of existence. This is not was intended or promised, and while they've been responsive to concerns and to missteps, this is not a way. This is not a path forward.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I just don't think this is what we signed up for. In my opinion, something goes wrong, and they say we're sorry. We didn't mean to do that. That's another reputation that gets tarnished and pushes it down the road. And I'll have to tell you who else. And I have never been a close. People are going to say, "Oh, you're his best friend," but Eric Camelback has given me a lot of help to guide me through this. He's more experienced at it than I am, and I know he's been up against the HPBA, or he's been taking the HPBA up against HISA, and one of the few people fought it out. And people better start getting together and backing them and get a group together, because they're fighting for these guys. They're trying to help them out, and we're not standing as a number right now. We're going to have to stand as a number. HISA is a creation of a very small group. I'm not against HISA, but they're a creation of a small group. We're a large group, and we're going to have to stand together, not to dismiss HISA, because that's not going. They're the law of the land. We understand that. That's what they got put in, but they've got to use us. They got to work with us, and they got to make us a part of the process.
Well, and then they've put people, they put respected horsemen on the advisory teams, but some of the practical application here and some of the mechanics have got to be addressed, and for them not to let you know and let you have the opportunity to inform your owners. I mean, by now you've talked, I'm sure, to a few. And speaking of which, I mean, Red Carpet Ready is looking to run here, and we've also been talking just this morning, in the Oaks. How affect the horses that are entered?
They before I went into my agreement with them, they told me all horses that I had entered could run, which is a change from their original policy. I remember when Ray Handel, they just started scratching all of his. I mean, and again, every time they'll react to a problem that they saw was a mistake. But I'm telling you, I'm sorry you isn't getting it anymore. You know, when people are getting damaged, these owners are getting damaged, and then after it's over, they say, well, we're sorry, we probably shouldn't have done that. When Englehart's clenbuterol positive came out, they said, well, we're sorry, that probably should not have come out till after we confirmed when he got it. Yeah, that's great, but it's the old thing. The horse is out of the stall, baby. It's too late to get him back.
So, for instance, poolside with Slim in the Oaks and Red Carpet, will they run under your name, or do they have? Do they run on?
They run under good to go.
Interesting.
They have no issues. That's new in their policy. That's very new.
Well, and they've been basically rewriting rules as they go. That's part of the.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's part of the process. And they're making some good new rules. I mean, they're making some good adjustments. But again, the guy that got damaged to cause them to make the adjustment doesn't help him a whole lot.
Well, what reaction have you gotten from Bo Bromagin and from Patrick and the company?
I have 100% backing, and 2D1 said if you can't run while you're suspended, don't enter.
Well, so the one good thing, I guess, is you can take these 7 days, the way jockeys take their days.
Nope, I'm taking them starting Saturday, and they'll go till next Saturday. But horses that were already in the race before this got agreement, they get to race. It does not affect it at all.
Very good. All right. Well, where we going to see you Saturday?
You'll see. I'll be at Gulfstream.
Okay, I'm over at Tampa. Obviously, safe travels. Enjoy the game today, and I'll repeat what I said, that the words of Rusty Arnold will carry some weight with those that haven't thought this through.
Yeah, the one thing that I said, Steve, which I am a firm believer in, and I don't know who'll read it, I don't know who'll believe anything, but if you believe that you're void of this or your turn's not coming, you're wrong, because it can happen to anybody out there, especially ship installs. That's the most danger. You coming out of your own barn where you have control of it, probably have a way less chance. But when you're shipping, you've got a lot bigger chance. And everybody better wake up if they think it can't happen to them.
Rusty Arnold, everybody. Rusty, thank you.
All right, Steve. Thanks for the call.
Rusty Arnold, everybody. And you will see his extensive statement that was being circulated by the National HBPA. And Rusty Arnold, folks. This is who's being dragnetted. You know what? I don't have to say anything. That's one of the reasons I was eager to let Rusty explain the situation that he's confronted, and he's to be admired for using this as an opportunity to alert stakeholders and other horsemen and players and fans to what's going on here, because this can't operate like this. Going to send you out to the race day. It's Thursday, and there's plenty to enjoy. So best of luck. Back with you tomorrow. Twin Spires weekend preview, and lots of Tampa, lots of Santa Anita, and there's some other good options too. We haven't even had a chance to dig into. Thanks to Russ. Jeff Franklin, win using Thorograph, Tony Black, Shannon Arvin from Keeneland, and Frank Miramati paying tribute to Larry Letterman. Talk to you in the morning.
Got the good honey.